joining us and being present with us. We're going to go ahead and get started. This meeting is an in-person meeting here at Benton Harbor High School. Um, Masks are required for all persons regardless of vaccination status, so we want to make sure that you're masked up. And then public participation, of course, is available in person. So if you guys would like to make public comment, we want to make sure that you fill out one of these forms. From Liz, you get those to me. We have public comment prior to the meeting getting started, and then public comment at the end. So if you're interested, make sure you get one of these forms. This meeting is a meeting of the Board of Education in public for the purpose of conducting the school district's business and is not to be considered a public community meeting. A recording of this meeting will be posted to the district cloud. Questions may be submitted beforehand to liz.goodwin@bhas.org or presented in person during the public comment section as indicated in the agenda. Board members may be contacted through the emails listed below. I call this meeting to order at 5:40 p.m. We'll begin with reciting our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right. Secretary, will you call the roll for attendance?
President Robinson.
Present.
Vice President Bradley. Secretary Triplett present. Treasurer Creighton.
Present.
Trustee Vaughn. Present. Trustee Buchanan.
Present.
Trustee Rocket Martin. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Secretary Triplett. It's been confirmed that we have quorum. Next on the agenda, we have approval of the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda? All right, the motion has been made by Trustee Buchanan. Is there a second or support? The motion has been made by Trustee Buchanan and supported by Trustee Rocket Martin that we approve the agenda. Any questions, comments, or concerns?
President Robinson, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
I noticed that there's a table item on the agenda. Is that following Robert's rules of order?
Yes, ma'am. I actually verified that with our trainer, Ms. Macon. The last time you asked her, she said that there's nothing special that has to happen for us to bring it back to the agenda if the board approves the agenda. So the last time you asked me that, I did email her because she's my policy procedure trainer for MASC and clarified this particular situation and if we would have to do anything special to bring it back to the agenda, because the last time we tabled it without an actual date. And she said there was nothing specific. It could go back on the drafted agenda and we could approve it.
So can you pull up Robert's rules of order? I just want to be clear because from my understanding, it has to come from the board to agree that this item is being taken off the
From the
table.
table, correct? So what I'm saying is that right now would be the moment. If the board so moves and approves this agenda, they are agreeing to take it off the table. Now, as far as the hearsay, if you would like me to forward you the exact email from Ms. Mason, who's trained your policy on Robert's Rules of Order, I will do that.
No, I'm not. Unfortunately, I'm not looking to receive an email. So I would like to hear back from you, but right now, I just want to make sure that we're following our procedures so you can move forward.
Correct. And so what I'm assuring you is that if the follow-up that you did not receive the last time was because I removed the item from the drafted agenda at that particular time. So I guess I did not necessarily answer your question because I just removed it as an item because we had not been provided an update at that particular time. So at this time, we are okay to proceed with this on the agenda if the board approves it as a thing. Any other questions, comments, or concerns regarding the agenda? Secretary, could you please call the roll?
President Robinson.
Yes.
Treasurer Creighton.
No.
Trustee Vaughn.
Yes.
Trustee Buchanan. Marquez. Yes. Martin.
Yes, you called me first. But I'll give you the details.
Secretary Triplett, no. Motion carried.
All right, so the agenda has passed. The first thing on the agenda is the review of our board norms. All right, our Board of Education norms for Benton Harbor area schools, we will treat each other with respect, we will listen to learn, we will refrain from side conversations. We will use our time wisely, starting and ending our meetings on time. We will challenge ideas, not people. We will ask questions when in doubt. There will be no surprises at the board table. We will practice the 7 norms of collaboration. The 7 norms are pausing, paraphrasing, posing questions, putting ideas on the table, providing data, paying attention to self and others, and presuming positive intention. Next on the agenda, we have public comment on agenda items. And I have a few forms here, so I'll call you as they're in order. We have Mr. Daryl Jackson. Do you have a comment on an agenda item, or is it for open public comment? Yes.
Ms. Robinson, can they please say their names loudly, please?
I'm sorry.
Who's
They can
speaking?
hear you. Go ahead.
Sir, make sure you enunciate your name so I can write down. Thank you. This, I'll make some.
We can hear you.
Oh, you hear me?
I can't.
My name is Gerald Jackson.
Thank you.
My name is Gerald Jackson, and I reside at 533 Head Michigan. I am recently a retired from the labor union and carpenter union. My question is, today is about tearing down the 3 schools, and one that got my attention in my organization is the Bar School. Mr. Ronald Triplett made a statement a while ago saying that it's gonna cost $500,000 to tear the school down. And he mentioned that instead of tearing it down, you can upgrade your own facilities, other facilities for that $500,000, which is true. But the question would be, what's gonna happen to our school? Well, that's my question today. My organization can take that school, a lot of history to that school. And what we can do, we can make a youth development program out of it and a sports arena, but it's the education part that's first, and secondary is the sports. What we can do, from my experience, and I am talking about trade, Mr. Triplett has in front of him, my skills, I'm certified in 50 states plus county. In the skilled trades, I got a group of people in carpentry, plumbing, pipe fitting, electrical, masonry, and also the former chief of police, Ron Senior, which is also a former city manager. He has a nonprofit program with the youth interested in helping with Bar School. One thing about Bar School, it was the beginning of a lot of us. Mr. Triplett, you know all about it. Mr. Buchanan, I know you know about it, because he was our mentor. The Canterbury Games was created at that school. In front of you, Mr. Triplett, I have some old stuff, medals and rivets, 69, all the way up to 79. This is my thing. These kids around here need to know other things, or than to hang the pants down, sell, those hang on the corner. They need to know how to do some skilled trades, if they're not going to college, or they're not going to service. I'm a product of that. I don't want to all for you. And with my experience and the help of others in the community, other retirees, they desperately want to help bring this school back to where it needs to be. It's a historical school, and my mother went there, I went there, Watson's mother went there, and aunties. This is something that can be saved. This is what we can do. if you can give us the school or some kind of way, within 18 months, we can show improvement, progress. What we'll do, we'll start on the ground, make it look good. We'll secure the building. I also have resources with Rick Villa. He's very environmental. There's a lot of asbestos in there. I'm also trained in lead base, removing lead and asbestos. I have 30 years experience. It is no reason why a building like that should be torn down, but it can be used for other things. And Mr. Triplett, you are correct. It can be used for something else, and you also can take that 500,000 and spend on something else. The next thing I'm going to talk about, I don't know if it's open public, is what? Would that be on another, would that be on something else? Well, I can mention it now. Okay. Coach White, it was approved, he put his name on the floor. Mr. Superintendent was there, Mr. Penn was there, and you was nominated. Now, we was trying to do it, and there's no cost to the school, but the pandemic hit. Now it's summertime. Is it possible that we can set up something with the superintendent, the board, to see if we can get our people in there to put his name on their floor, so it'll be a celebration when they open up the basketball season?
So we actually don't respond right at this particular time, but I do remember what you're referencing, that we follow through. Because I was there, that's the time we were playing this way. We'll follow through.
And last but not least, we're hoping, the organization I'm in, we're hoping that we can get that school, because right now it's costing y'all to get it cut, keep it up. We also have 2 people in our organization that does landscaping and grass cutting. So we got the resources to do this. I think.
Thank you. So ladies and gentlemen, I apologize. Mr. Jackson, you did very well. I did not read the public comment guidelines. I'm gonna read those. You did it. I'm gonna read those so everyone is clear. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on education issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. Today, there are 2 areas for comment on the agenda of which you may decide when to speak: public comment on agenda items and open public comment. Per policy 0167.3, which governs board participation at board meetings, we request that you preface your comments by completing the public participation form with your name, address, email, and group affiliation when appropriate. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to a 3-minute duration, and per our bylaw, no participant may speak more than once during the meeting. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. The board will listen, take comments and questions under advisement, and not respond at this time. I, as president, will refer questions to the superintendent for research and response. If you have specific questions to the board or executive team that require follow-up, please email those directly to liz.billings@bojs.org. So you actually did do those guidelines, so thank you. All right, so next on, thank you for your comment, Mr. Jackson. Next we have Commissioner Henderson. You wanted to.
Good evening, everyone. I have 2 phone questions. I do want to comment on the agenda item, but I gave many of you the flyer for the Ben Harbor River Fest, and I also have an ask, Chair, from the school. We could actually utilize the parking lot on Colfax and possibly the one here, I'm sorry, on Colfax and then on Empire for parking for that particular event. And if you want have questions about that, I'll remain available so that I can answer any of those. So I do want to comment on the items as it relates to the schools. I've talked to you guys, to many of you at different times about school usage. And I would hate to see many of those buildings get torn down and not be utilized for something else. I've had the opportunity to visit places where they have redone schools and turned them into apartments. What I'm finding out as part of my career in the industry that I'm in is that we have a lack of affordable housing, not low income housing, but affordable housing. rents between $500 to $900 for people, working people. And so I would implore you guys to consider utilizing some of the facilities that are able to be used, partnering with a nonprofit, a builder or something, utilizing those sites as housing. We have a critical housing shortage in the city of Benton Harbor. I go to court on Fridays with civil court and experience and see a lot of people in our community getting evicted for lots of different reasons. And we just don't have affordable housing. We have quite a few slum landlords that the city is working to try to address some of those issues. But I would implore you guys to look at a different kind of use with the facilities that you have. And if can I approach? I would say check that out and look at it and pass. Unfortunately, I only have one, but to look at that to see how you can do something like that in our community. You control what happens and how they look. Whether it's 80 to 100 units or something along that line, but it's a way to utilize those buildings in a different way and to provide housing. Many times we talk about gentrification. There's a project that's happening on the river, and it'll address a specific need of a specific level of person, but we don't have any of that. And I think we have a real opportunity to address that need in our community and to control that narrative of how that looks. So just wanted to put that in your ear, and thank you for listening.
Next we have, yes, down the water.
Oh, okay.
Did you get a form?
I do.
Yeah, thank you.
But Madam President, the form, you have a sign-up list, but the form asks for comments, and some of us may put them as a summary statements on this.
So you didn't plan to make your comment on the mic?
I do, but I've also.
Oh, you're
down
saying
so
you
that-
kept it so you know what you want to say.
Absolutely.
Okay, so if I don't have your paper, remind me once I get it. Okay. All right, Mr. Watson. And thank you for clarifying that.
Good evening, board, Dr. Townsend, all officials. Wanted to just go down memory lane for about 5 seconds, 5 to 7. In the 70s, I attended North Shore School and met a young lady by the name of Lee Isaac, who is still a great friend of mine. Even now, we still communicate. That's been some 35, 40 years ago. My purpose in saying that is this, is that people have affinities to building, but relationships transcend far beyond what buildings are. What you have to look at is what it's going to cost you, not only to tear it down, but to maintain it. And when you start talking about utilizing these assets for different purposes, you got to look at is the capacity there to do it. Having served on the board and having served as the facilities chairperson, I know the numbers that need to be obtained to do the work, the housing, to repurposing. You're talking about major money. And if you give a clean slate so someone can build something versus trying to rehab and or retrofit something, it's a lot easier to do than it is to have someone retrofit something that's 70 years old. So what I'm saying to you is that if you want to maximize the monies that you have in your coffers to educate the students of this district, you need to make sure that you do it in an equitable way as well as an efficient and effective way. Because again, to just keep holding on to the sentimentality of it is not going to get the job done. The job has to be done is what's best for these students in this community to make sure that we have a viable school district and give the students the best opportunity to learn that they can. So thank you for your time, and I appreciate it. You have a great evening.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. All right, next we have Mr. Michael
Good evening, Michael Hoy, class of 1984, 292 Broadway in the city of Benton Harbor. A lot of these things have already come up, and I just want to share with you, is there a strategic plan that's been out in place? Where do we find that? Has there been an engineering study done? Where do we find that? Is there an environmental study done? I think we're going to find that. What is the demo cost? What is the replacement cost? If we are going to possibly demo these buildings, what are we going to put in place that will strategically allow that property to be seized to only be used as another possibly new, brand new state-of-the-art technical center or a skill center in time as we move down the line, if these buildings are not going to be salvageable or be able to be retrofitted. Let's see, do we owe anybody monies at the state, and that's why we're tearing down these buildings, or possibly letting them to be demoed? There's a lot of chitter chatters on, let's clean that conversation. Do we owe the state money? That's why we have to take, it's costing us too much. Those are some of the questions that were fed to me. Is there a structural study done? And why are we doing this now? So those are some of my questions. And the next one would be on the historical part. This means a lot to a lot of both black and whites that have been in our district for many, many years. It's not just a black thing that has happened here. So if we erase this, we're erasing so much again. We don't have a place that gives birth that people say they were born in Benton Harbor. We almost lost to have a place that said we're going to graduate from Benton Harbor. So our concerns are, so there was a building down at Pipestone and Main Street that was going to be demoed by the Brownfield. And Cressy and all of them, they got partnered up with it and they saved that building. They saved it. Now that place is being rented out or lost, but they were going to demo that oldest building in Benton Harbor where the Benton Harbor Public Library started. Mr. Saunders building, Saunders Gray, at the corner of Pipestone and Main. Now look what it is today and what is being done, okay? And that's where the Benton Harbor Public Library started. Look what, they were going to tear it down. They got the money to tear it down. They said, no. This is where Benton Harbor started. Let's have these conversations. We have the capability, the technology, and the people are committed to gather around and let's really look at this the hardest that we can. Thank you so much. The last one is Phil Struck Field. Eye of the Tigers used to be Eye of the Tigers painted on the side of the Phil Struck Field broadcast booth. Okay, what happened to that? Where is it? I know some of the story. Just like to fill everybody else in the rest of the story. Why does it still say Phil Struck Field, Home of the Tigers, or even Eye of the Tigers? Thank you so much for your time.
Good evening, Marion Triplett, 818 South Crystal Avenue, Benton Charter Township. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I want to speak about the demolitions because I would like to see a balanced proposition where there are costs for maintaining the buildings, costs for demolishing the school buildings, and what would it be to build new buildings? I remember reading a comment from Trustee Rockwood Martin that our students deserve new buildings, but that should be done together in tandem so that the public knows exactly what they're losing or changing and what they're gaining. I've said before about stakeholders, a stakeholder has as much in the game as you do. If you lose, they lose. If you win, they win. I think we have profiteers, pillagers, and poverty pimps many times who take our demographics and get money for it. They sustain and grow and build, and we end up with nothing. I don't doubt that that budget and the decisions that you all have to make are difficult. I know that being citizens of Benton Harbor, the larger Benton Harbor area, many of you having lived your lives here, that there's emotion tied to that, and you're trying to remove that and make a professional decision based on your responsibility as a board. But one of those schools in particular is across the street from a public housing complex filled with families who are actively having babies. And if you want to increase the roar, you will ask what they need. That was a state-of-the-art Boys and Girls Club before their needs took them somewhere else. but that grass, whatever they did to make a golf course, it remains the same. The stakeholders and supposed friends need to come together and help you all capitalize on their capacity and their knowledge in receiving monies to do brownfield cleanup, environmental removals, social well-being, social cohesion, health, housing, training, and education. There are a plethora of opportunities in each of those sites. Take the emotions away, good business, family business, education business would say that we have to have a balanced plan. Some things may be torn down and built new, but we need to see the whole scope so that we can trust that commitment in the quality of education and the access for education for the citizens of the greater Benton Harbor community.
Like, no, that is my advice. My master's at Western University, and I cannot be prepared with her giving my advice. So thank you for your comment. Next, we have Ms. A. Is there anyone else that would like to make comment on agenda item? Go ahead.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Anicia Noel. If you haven't heard of me so far, it's me. I'm in person this time. So I have several questions because we're going to go down memory lane like they brought up. In 1998, the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority was established. The Charter Benton Harbor version was established in 1998. It had 40 properties listed. And one of the 40 properties listed to be redeveloped because it was AKA classified as contaminated past its life based off of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority, which is appointed by our city mayor and commission. And it holds some of the commissioners on it as today. Okay? They classify certain properties across the city as contaminated under the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. And guess what one of the main powers of the Brownfield Redevelopment Authority is to do? Capture local operating school facility taxes to demolize. Some of their main power is to capture, I'm gonna say it again, capture operating local school facility taxes to redevelop. So where's that money coming from? Which I asked months ago. Just like I asked Ms. Goodwin at our last meeting, what time was this? 7/13/2021 at 7:45 p.m. I asked her, who inspected the buildings and classified them as past their expected life? Especially with, as your vice president stated, the high school, this building is 150 years old. He clarified it, even when he was arguing with Secretary Triplett, that this building is 150 years old. So who classified North Shore as being expected and past its life? After it was me that brought it to you all in January. It was pending sale. And now you're telling me that it's classified as past its life. But yet there's a whole Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. And some people are here today, even though we pretend like we don't know everybody, and we pretend like we follow. I'm gonna ask again. When are you going to implement true transparency and integrity? I asked Ms. Goodwin, how did the North Shore property go from pending sale to now it's classified as past its expected life? Why is the CFO yet again not in person? And yet again, no, it is. It's up.
The CFO is actually not.
This is,
Oh, well, where's your boss at, Luana Shelton? Because she's supposed to be here too for this. One last question.
I'm sorry.
I did already.
Okay, so we'll be sure you get followed.
Brownfield Redevelopment Authority. Bard School.
Next we have Ms. Johnson, Tina Johnson, I'm sorry. Tina. But Ms. Johnson, you go, that's fine. Come on, Ms. Johnson. So you're after the, yeah, okay. So you're just an open public comment. Okay. And your comments on the agenda item? Yes. Okay.
Stacy Johnson, 299 Bradley Road, Demolitions, Township. And I am a 1980 Bradley.
can you speak a little? Yeah.
It might be up.
We just want to make sure they can hear you on the live recording.
There you go.
Okay, so once again, I'm Stacy Johnson. I live at 299 Bradford Road, Boone Harbor, Michigan. I am a 1981 graduate of Boone Harbor High School. I am currently employed in Boone Harbor High School, Boone Harbor Area School, excuse me. My concern is the demolition of buildings. And I want to know why not. We have staff in buildings currently that are in dire need of upgrades. We have buildings that need air conditioning, because as we know, it is very hot during the summer, and it's going to be that way when we come back in the fall. There's no way that we can go into rooms with other teachers that have the convenience of the air conditioner, not by their, saying that they wanted one, it was already there when they got to those rooms. We can't pile all those kids and teachers in the same room to teach. Also, we need new heat over at Fairplain East School, one of the newest buildings that there is, and it is some 50, 60 years old. We need new ceiling tiles. We have ceiling tiles that are missing, ceiling tiles with big stains in them. So if you walk in the hallway and look up, you will see them. We also need whiteboards. We are writing on a half of a whiteboard. And we're teaching a class of 28 students when we come back. We also need playground equipment. Fairplain East School is sitting over there on Union with 2 swing sets. That's it. Why is a middle school sitting with playground equipment? Does anybody know? And we need a staff bathroom where the staff can move in the bathroom. They don't have to sit at an angle. So this is my question. Why are we ready to demolish these buildings now when they've been standing there? If we have this money, let's put it to use in the buildings that are in operation, that are holding your staff and holding our students. Thank you.
Is there anyone else for public comment on agenda items? So this gives you an opportunity to speak to us before we discuss our items. And then if not, then you would be open public comment after we have our discussion. So is there anyone else for public comment on agenda items? All right, thank you everyone for your feedback and your input. This is the most that we've had in attendance. This is actually our second in-person meeting, so we do value your feedback and all of your comments today. We are listening, so we thank you so much for providing your insight. Next on the agenda, we have board business, Asbestos, Abatement, and building demolition bids. I'm going to pass the floor over to Mr. Johnson. He is going to begin with his presentation.
Explain this one.
And while he's getting ready, just to provide clarification, we have He's our CFO. We have 4 teams, but none of them are supervisors to another. They're all over their independent sections. So HR, finance, curriculum, and then we have Mr. Miller that does
Jeff.
support services.
Jeff, do you see the screen? Okay. Thank you. You can probably take the next one. I think he's ready for you. Please go.
Sorry. He's off. Yeah, I gave him the mic to him. Whenever he's ready.
Thank you. This evening, we're going to present a presentation on asbestos abatement and building demolition bids.
Can't hear you.
In the next several minutes, we will talk about why we're here this evening. We'll also share the decision that's facing the Board of Education. We'll talk about how we can memorialize our old friends. We'll share the bid tabs so you can see the cost to demolish the old schools, and talk about costs to keep the old schools if the board does not vote to demolish them.
Now, some of the board members are going to sit with the public so they have a better view of your presentation.
Applause. Thank you.
Oh. My apologies. You may proceed.
Thank you. The presentation will also include a list of board options, including pros and cons. We'll talk about a new school building option. We'll share some myths versus facts. We'll entertain questions from the board, and then also provide an opportunity for board discussion. With that, let's talk about why we're here. Bottom line is our tiger is hurting. Our tiger is in Benton Harbor Area School's mascot, the tiger. We have an opportunity to help heal our tiger. Some of the ways our tiger is hurting is our general fund has been in deficit since June of 2007. In addition, our enrollment has declined dramatically over the last decade and beyond. In addition, our teacher salaries are low compared to other school districts' teacher salaries in this county. And some of our closed school buildings present a safety hazard. Additionally, the board owns several deteriorating buildings that would be too expensive to renovate. And lastly, some of our neighborhoods need an aesthetic boost. So how can we help heal our tiger? There are a number of ways. One is we can exemplify good financial leadership by freeing up general fund dollars so they can be spent on more worthwhile purposes, including teacher salaries, making them more competitive, custodial pay, and other uses as well. We can also improve the health of the general fund by reducing our risk and liability for these 3 sites, and reduce other general fund costs, thereby improving the district's long-term economic viability. Some other ways we can help heal our tiger is to improve the aesthetics in 3 neighborhoods by removing a very, very visible eyesore from each of those 3 neighborhoods. And we can take steps to restore our tiger brand by removing these deteriorating buildings from the public's daily viewing. We can also implement a SEAC recommendation to reduce the building footprint, or shall I say our paw print. Our current footprint or square footage is huge for a district with our enrollment. The board currently owns 10 school buildings, and 7 of those are open, 10 of them are closed. If the board ultimately votes to demolish 3 schools, the board would then own 7 schools that are open and 7 that are closed. How's that again? So right now, we've got 7 open, 10 closed, so more closed than are open. If the board approves demolition of 3 schools, the board would own an equal number of open and equal number of closed schools. The decision facing the board is, should the board vote to award the bid to remove asbestos from and demolish 1, 2, or 3 of the following schools, those being Bard Elementary School, Martindale Elementary, and North Shore School. Just a quick observation. Old school buildings are our friends. We have good memories of those old buildings. They connect us to a very special time in our lives and in our children's lives. We long to remember those old buildings. But at some point, though, it unfortunately becomes unfeasible to continue repairing almost every building. There are a few exceptions, Taj Mahal, Leaning Tower of Pisa, but Bard, Martindale, and North Shore are neither. How could we memorialize our old friends, these old schools? There are a number of ways. I've listed a few here, including putting a picture in the central office, maybe preserving the building plaque for each of the schools, possibly giving away bricks from the old schools. And then I'm sure there are a number of other ways that you could memorialize these buildings with input from the community. Next, we'll take a look at what it would cost to remove the asbestos and demolish the schools. This is the bid tab. It's the summary of all the bids received from 5 different vendors, from lowest bid to highest bid. And the 3 numbers in light green near the middle are the lowest prices that were bid for North Shore, approximately $92,000, Martindale, $164,000 rounded, and Bard, a little over $245,000, for a grand total of $501,565. The highest bid was more than double that. Let's turn now to cost to keep the old schools. There are 2 categories of costs. One is costs that are readily quantifiable, costs that can easily be measured, like building security alarm monitoring that we pay every month. The electrical costs, because we do still incur some electrical costs at even some closed schools. We have lawn mowing costs, natural gas costs for some of the closed schools, snow plowing costs, so we have a path for the fire department should there be a building fire, and also water and sewerage costs, even though there's no water and sewage use at the closed schools. Then there's another category of costs. These are costs that are not easily measured, not readily quantifiable. And one of these would be the asphalt depreciation parking lot, boiler depreciation, sidewalk, driveway, et cetera, depreciation. We also have property insurance costs that are charged to the district as a whole and not on a building by building basis, but so that's part of the pooled cost. And we also have a kind of another invisible cost, that's property tax revenue by not having these properties on the tax rolls. I would point out though that this evening there's no recommendation being made this evening to sell any of the properties if they are demolished. The recommendation is simply to, well, I'll share the recommendation later. Another not readily quantifiable cost is the damage to our Tiger brand due to the poor building appearances, and also an infrequent but occasional cost would be vandalism repairs for various closed buildings. The board has several options. One is the status quo. This is no action, let the bids expire in mid-August. Option number 2 would be to ask the low bidder to extend the bid award deadline. There's no guarantee that the bidder would do that, but that is an option. Option number 3 would be to award bid to remove asbestos and demolish either 1, 2, or 3 of the buildings. Another option would be to rebid this work, and we'll present pros and cons of these options, starting with option 1, the status quo option. Some of the pros is that this would avoid using any of the sinking funds, at least for now. It's the easiest option, and there may be some persons who quite understandably have positive memories and emotional ties to some of these former schools. Some of the cons, though, of the status quo option is the buildings would continue to deteriorate. They would continue to be neighborhood eyesores, and the district will continue incurring costs for these buildings. In addition, they will continue to pose a safety risk for children and adults near the schools, and the district will continue to have other risk exposure for these buildings, fire. And the condition of these schools will continue to tarnish the Tiger brand. And also the district would continue having an oversized building footprint for our current enrollment level. Some additional cons of the status quo is that the funds that we've invested so far in developing the bid specifications for the asbestos removal and building demolition would see no return on that investment. And the district would have wasted the time and effort of 5 vendors who invested significant amount of time to prepare their bids. Now, that may discourage, would likely discourage them from rebidding if the district were to put this on hold and rebid it some years down the line. And also, if the district were to rebid this work in the future, inaction on the current bids this summer would likely chill interest among some of the bidders, maybe all the bidders in the future, and that would almost surely increase the cost. Another option is to ask the low bidder to extend the bid award deadline. The pro is it would give the board more time to decide, and if the low bidder were to agree to this, which is not guaranteed, the board would still pay the most competitive price of any of the 5 bids received, if the low bidder would agree to it. On the downside, the low bidder may say no. Option number 3 is to award the bids for 1, 2, or 3 buildings. And some of the pros would be to increase safety, and that is a 3-pronged improvement. One is the safety of the neighborhood children who can be injured while they're trying to enter the building inappropriately, while they're trying to, quote, tour the building, or while they're hurriedly trying to exit the building when someone discovers they're there. And there's very, very little lighting in some of these spaces, so someone could easily fall and injure themselves on broken glass and other debris in the halls. Another safety consideration is the safety of the neighborhood adults who take up temporary residence in the closed buildings. While touring the buildings this morning, in fact, maintenance staff and I met someone who was occupying one of the buildings inappropriately. So a third concern is the safety of the maintenance staff who encounter these unauthorized persons and request them to leave. And another reason for recommending this to the pro is to reduce the board's liability for personal injury to someone that may be in closed buildings inappropriately. Additional pros include to increase the district's long-term economic viability by reducing the risk of having someone buy one of these buildings, then renovating it, then opening a charter school, and then siphoning away more students and more state aid from veterinary schools. Another pro would be to improve the aesthetics of the neighborhoods and to be better neighbors by removing these eyesores from 3 neighborhoods. At least at 2 of the buildings, we have a fair number of the windows boarded up, and obviously that does not enhance the aesthetics of the neighborhood. And demolition may help increase the property values of some of the nearby properties. Another pro is that demolition would help improve or heal the Tiger brand. As you know, these buildings are deteriorating, and Bard and Martindale especially, their exterior already significantly tarnishes our Tiger brand. And having a tarnished Tiger brand makes it harder for us to attract students and to keep students. Another reason for recommending action on this is to reduce unnecessary recurring costs, listed those below. In addition, demolishing 1, 2, or 3 buildings would fulfill one of the SEAC recommendations to reduce the district's building footprint. And also the sinking fund can be used to demolish the buildings. Additionally, demolishing the buildings would help us more efficiently use our maintenance staff because they're currently required periodically to go check on closed buildings. Sometimes there's vandalism that needs to be repaired and people that need to be encouraged to exit the building. Another set of pros pertain to if the board were to down the road sell any of the land. And again, the recommendation is not being made this evening to sell any of these properties. So if sometime down the road, whether it's 3 years, 5 years, 10 years from now, the board were to sell any of the properties or seek to sell, removing the buildings would help improve the marketability of the land. And also depending on the buyer, the property would likely be added to the property tax rolls for Benton Harbor schools, for the city, for a township, for the county, for the ISD, and that would increase the property tax revenue for all these entities. And additionally, sale proceeds, if the board later sells vacant land, would go into the general fund. That would help the general fund. Now let's take a look at some of the cons, because there are some cons. One of the cons is that demolishing any of these schools may be politically unpopular. Some members of the community may rightly have fond memories of one or more of these old schools. And another con is that it would require use of some sinking fund dollars, and we'll come back to the sinking fund in a few minutes. Some members of the public may mistakenly assume that the board will soon sell the newly vacant land to developers or others after the buildings are demolished, even though the district rarely receives any inquiries on these properties. Some more cons. Some of the taxpayers and residents may be uncertain what the board plans to do with the vacant properties after the buildings are demolished. An additional con is grants are sometimes available for building demolition. We did check with the land bank at least 2 times in the last 2 years to see if funds were available, and they were not. If the buildings are demolished now without using grant funds, in other words, using sinking funds instead, the district would need to spend sinking fund dollars on that work. We could, however, wait and put this on hold for years and decades and still not receive any grant funds or land bank funds to demolish these schools. Let's take a quick look at option 4, and that's to rebid the work. One of the pros is that it would postpone the decision for the board. Cons, the tire brand would continue suffering in the neighborhoods with these deteriorating buildings, and fewer bidders would be likely to bid on the rebid project, and it would likely result in higher prices. And also the district would continue incurring general fund costs for these buildings year after year. The question was asked, how much would it cost to build a new school? Unfortunately, the answer depends. It depends on several factors, including whether it's elementary, middle school, or high school. Also depends on the size of the building, how it's configured, whether it's a new site that we need to purchase land for or an existing site, and whether additional site work would be needed, or we could use, say, an existing parking lot and or gymnasium. Would it have a swimming pool? What types of spaces? Like, would it need an auditorium, 1 gym or 2? So it's really a complicated question, but we do have an answer from an architectural firm from a study that was done back in 2017, architectural firm GMB. They conducted a facility assessment for the district, and they provided an estimate for building new for the figures that you see here. So they provided 2 elementary school cost estimates, one, the low being 18.3 million, and the high being Discovery Enrichment Center replacement, $26.5 million. So that gives you some sense of what an architect 4 years ago estimated that the cost would be. Obviously, this costs have surely gone up. Now, the question could be asked, should we build 1 or more new schools? Certainly, that's an option the board could consider. Just a few observations. We would need to get approval from the Michigan Department of Treasury if we want to use the state's credit rating, which we would want to. Secondly, the Treasury Department may be hesitant to approve a bond issue using the state's credit rating while our enrollment continues to decline significantly. Also, we would need approval of the Benton Harbor Schools voters, and it would substantially increase the district's long-term debt. It would also increase the district's millage rates. Now let's turn to some myths and facts regarding building demolitions. One myth is if the board accepts the bid for asbestos abatement and building demolition for 1, 2, or 3 schools, it would be unable to afford facility improvements in the other schools, in the open schools. Facts, the cost for this project is just over $500,000 for all 3 schools. And the board does have the option of awarding the bid for just 1, or 2, or 3 schools. So it's not locked into the $0 or $500,000 choice. And the combined balance in our two sinking funds as of June 30 was approximately $5.25 million. So there's more than 10 times the amount needed in the sinking fund to pay for demolition of those three schools. Additionally, this new tax year, the district will receive approximately $1.4 million in sinking fund revenue, in addition to the $5.25 million balance. Another myth, if the board approves demolition of any buildings, the land must subsequently be sold. That's definitely not required. The board can hang on to the property as long as it wishes. Another myth, it would be feasible to restore these schools. Spoke with an architect regarding this, and he indicated that it would cost at least $2 million each to upgrade these schools. And even if the district invested $2 million times three, $6 million to upgrade those three schools, at least $6 million, it would still not be economically feasible to operate schools that are as small as those three. So what would need to be done to make these old schools usable? We'd have to upgrade the heating and ventilation and possibly air conditioning system. We need to make ADA upgrades, Americans with Disability upgrades throughout the building. We need to improve the building envelope, windows and roofs. In some buildings, I mentioned the windows are boarded up, broken out, electrical improvements, plumbing, and much more. So would it be feasible to renovate the buildings? No. And here's why. The board already owns more closed buildings than it owns open buildings. Also, our historical enrollment trend does not support adding school space in Benton Harbor schools. And in addition to the $2 million I mentioned a moment ago, minimum, that would be needed to upgrade these schools, we received an estimate from a roofing assessment company that the North Shore building, the only one of these three schools that we had a roof assessment conducted on, that roof needs to be replaced soon, and it has estimated replacement price tag of $125,000 to $175,000 plus professional fees. And then this chart shows renovation costs. This is from the GMB facilities assessment back in 2017. So again, these costs have increased since. And you can see that just to renovate deck would be about $4.5 million, hull and MLK over $7 million a piece. So renovation is not cheap, obviously. Another question, so now let's move to some questions and answers. What could we do with the money that we could save if we were to demolish the schools? One, we could use the funds to help balance the general fund so it has a structurally balanced budget. Also, we could make employee pay more competitive, whether it be the teachers who have been paid at uncompetitively low pay rates for some years, our custodians and other employee groups as well. And the question could be reasonably asked, well, why did anybody allow these buildings to deteriorate to the condition that they're in? There's no way we can know here tonight why and how that happened, but I'd like to share some things that previous board members and central office administrators did right with these buildings. One, they wisely chose not to sell these schools to charter schools that would have siphoned off our students and our state aid. Two, they were obviously aware of declining enrollment and shrinking revenue, and they did not waste money upgrading the buildings. Three, they sought and obtained voter approval for a sinking fund back in 2007 to help fund building repairs and other facility-related work. And four, they didn't use the money that they saved through employee salary cuts to pour into those closed school buildings. And they did not demolish the older school buildings before the community was ready. Another question and answer, how much money does our sinking fund generate per year? Approximately $1.4 million. And if the board and the voters approve increasing the sinking fund millage rate from the current 2 mils to up to possibly 3 million, up to 3 mils, the annual revenue would increase to about 2.1 million. So if we increase the millage rate from 2 mils now to 3 mils potentially, it would increase the annual revenue from 1.4 to $2.1 million. But a recommendation is not being made to increase millage. Another question and answer, if the board approves demolition of the old schools, who would benefit? One would be parents of the children who live near these schools, because obviously safety is an issue if those kids are entering buildings. And secondly, neighbors who live near the old schools that have to look at the eyesores and the attractive nuisance. Thirdly, students would benefit because resources that we're now spending from the general fund on the old buildings would now be available for other uses. And students and staff would benefit because right now our dilapidated old schools tarnish the tiger by sending a loud, clear message to the public that our buildings are in sad shape, at least those 3 schools. And our taxpayers would benefit because they would no longer be paying utility costs, insurance, roof depreciation, and other costs month after month, year after year for these closed schools. Just a few more Q&A. Why not just sell these buildings with the asbestos in them? A person could reasonably ask. One is these buildings are in very poor condition and they're already relatively unmarketable. Secondly, the asbestos in these buildings makes them even less marketable. And third, the district can achieve better pricing for asbestos removal than a would-be buyer who requests asbestos removal pricing for only one building. But most importantly, if someone, if anyone, or if an organization buys any one of these 3 buildings and they renovate it and they open a charter school, they'll siphon away more students from contemporary schools. That's the cost. Another question is, what happens if the board takes no action on the bids? The status quo option, the bids will expire in mid-August. You can see the list here. The status quo will continue. And something else that would continue is our tiger would still need healing. So the question, one of the final questions we have, if not now, when? If these schools are not now bad enough to approve demolishing, how bad must they become before the demolition is approved? And I'm sorry, this picture that's on the screen right now is a little fuzzy. This is from Bard this morning. Administrative recommendation is to request that the board members take a tour of all 3 of these schools so a well-informed decision can be made. And then for the board to either reject all the bids or to award the bid to remove asbestos from and to demolish Bard and or Martindale and or North Shore before the bids expire in mid-August. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions from the board.
All right, so thank you, Mr. Johnson, for putting a PowerPoint together that answers a lot of the questions that not only the board had, but the community as well. I just wanted to kind of clarify some things. So there were individuals in the community, I think, automatically assumed that this meeting was a meeting where we would be voting to demolish it. And so this is a meeting with the board simply having a conversation about the status of this building, what our options are, and deciding as an entire board how we want to proceed. There's been quite a bit in the last few years, you all know, in the media as it relates to us fighting for our district. And so we received recommendations from our community engagement advisory committee. One of those recommendations, they include HR, academic, finance, and also exhibit. And so, as he stated, they recommended that we work on our square footage and kind of look at our facilities and come up with a facility plan. We have had so much to accomplish as a board since January that we have not had an opportunity to have an actual conversation about this topic because we've mentioned it maybe 3 times or 2 times, but it's always stands in other major conversations. And so we wanted to give our board an opportunity to discuss this topic as a whole and proceed, decide how we want to proceed moving forward. So we do value you all being here, giving us your feedback. So now we are at board questions. So I am going to open the floor for questions. I will call each board member because if you all have questions, I'm going to give everyone the floor because I don't know how more of these actual meetings we'll have on this topic. If you don't have a question at the time, you can pass, and we'll proceed to the next trustee. And then after we get questions answered, if answered tonight, if you all are in position where you have input on the options that he's providing, whether you like option 1, option 2, or option 3, you can provide that insight, or you can simply say you do not have, you're not leaning in either direction. But I want to make sure that we come out of this conversation knowing where each of us are, because that'll help us in our meeting moving forward when we do the calculation. So we'll begin with Trustee Buchanan. You have any questions for Mr. Johnson? Okay. Don't start. Okay. Trustee Roxanne Martin, any questions that you would like to begin with?
I would like to ask Mr. Johnson.
Thank you.
Trustee
I can talk loud.
Just talking to a microphone.
Thank you. If in fact we do demolish the buildings, I'd like to ask Mr. Johnson, do we have funds in place that we can fix the things that that Stacy was talking about, Ms. Mitchell was talking about? Right? Can we do both? Because her concern is an immediate concern and it's genuine. And the buildings that need to be demolished, that needs to be taken care of too. So I'm asking you, do we have funds in place that we can do both at the same time?
It would be helpful to see a list of what she presented.
Take your message.
It would be helpful to see a list of what she presented, but there's some things, some types of work that were permitted to use sinking fund dollars for, and some that we're not allowed to. For instance, maintenance, we're not allowed to use sinking funds for routine painting of classrooms and other spaces. We can't use sinking fund dollars. We can't use it for employee benefit, salaries or benefits. But I'm sure that we can, but depending on what her list included, without having seen the list, I'm kind of reluctant to answer yes or no. But if she said replace, I heard her say heating system and air conditioning. It depends on what that means. If she's talking about replacing all the boilers and all the unit vents in all the classrooms, that would be a costly expenditure. So it would be premature for me to answer that without seeing the list and a clear definition of what that list really is intended to include.
I have a question, Ms. Goodwin. Did you catch the things that Ms. You would be able to play those back in the minutes, the things that Ms. Johnson lists? Not right now, but I'm saying when you listen.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, as long as I can.
And those particular items that she mentioned, can you snag just that bit out of the meeting and ensure that gets to our facilities chair, Mr. Bradford, who's not present?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Secretary Tripp, we have, were you done with your questions, Trustee Martin? Okay. Okay, Trustee Buchanan, you have the floor.
I don't know if this is a question to Mr. Johnson, but in the past, Bard School was used by Young Stars, a program that I, with my drill team, we had classes in there, we did things. So Mr. Johnson, is there any way, I don't know if I'm out of order, I'm on the board, I'm not trying to tell you to favor this way, but I tried to get in touch with Mr. Barnes. He, 2 years ago, he submitted a bid for the school. There's so much, you really, you got people saying this, somebody saying that. So I know what Mr. Barnes did. We had football, we had cheerleading, we had basketball. Every kid in Ben Harbor is not gonna be Dr. Jackson, Dr. Triplett, Dr. Lou. They're gonna be no other things. Our young people need to be involved. I mean, everywhere I go. I was with one of my godsons today, took me to the store. And the little boy jumped on me, you got no lunch in the house, you're with me. We need a program. Ben Harbor, and I know, definitely all the buildings should be destroyed, but like I said, Bard School is one that have a history. That's where I started my career 32 years ago. I worked at Ben Harbor at school. But Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna have Mr. Barnes to call you. I don't know if he could buy the building, rent it, or whatever, but he was in that building, and I know he spent good money about 3 years ago. And they came along and said, kick him out. And in that process, I don't know if Ben Harbor, the community knows, but I got a grant for $3,000, and I bought drums. Right now, I don't even know where they are. One drum cost 800, 700. So that's the thing that we have to say, not trying to hurt anyone's feelings. We need to start picking up, stop pointing the finger at each other and do something. Cause see, me, I already been there, and I'm old now, but I still want to direct these young people. I don't know, every weekend, one of the young people on the stroke. So what Highland Project? I used to have Mother's Day for May Day, make paper proud. Kids have parades. We need to tell Mr. Johnson, I'm gonna have Mr. Bond to contact you. I don't know about the order or whatever, but we need to say that bill. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam President. I guess, for me, Justin, for me, just looking at the pattern, the step, there's a pattern here that some of us are not unfamiliar with. It just, all of a sudden, all of this work is being done on 94 coming into Benton Harbor. Now, all of a sudden, Hub is full of mold, and Hub been full of mold every time they get ready to make a move, every other administration. Hub is full of mold. Bard School, I rode past Bard School, tree taller than the building. And people have received hundreds of thousands of dollars under the guise they're doing grounds and facilities. The scare tactic of if you do this, the teachers are going to get more pay. We gave up as administrators, pay for 8 years. And as teachers, pay for 8 years under that same lie that these things are going to happen. And many of our teachers in worse shape they were now than they were then. People, excuse me, you all. Thank you. This is a serious matter. I sent the superintendent and this Board of Education over 150 pictures of the facilities that our kids are occupying right now today. When our guests came into this front corridor by this library this morning, and I sent you the pictures, it was grass growing up out of the crack. It's gone now. When you step outside of this building and you look right over here, there's a tree coming from, I don't know if it's coming from the roof or not. And this district has gone into contract with people year after year after year. And everybody makes money. And the people here have nothing still in return. I walked through these buildings on a visit when I first became a member of the Board of Education. I looked at these grounds when I gave my vote to support contract for ground upkeep. 5 days before graduation, in those pictures that you all received, is utter neglect. For me, these tactics it's not moving me. And I think that there's more to be done And I think these citizens deserve more. Because see, there's some underlying things that nobody's moved by anybody just stepping up here. Because this neglect has been going on too long. Our kids are in buildings that in the summer, they're burning up, and in the winter, they are freezing. The same, 7 years ago, administrators of each building was told to walk through their building and to identify every piece of the way what needed to be done. So I still have my list. And guess what? I walked through this building myself, and some of those same things are still undone. Today. So for me, and I think what really bothers me is when people have the audacity and the nerve to minimize people's passion or people's commitment to their school and the history of this community. Because we, in this community, we've seen them come and we've seen them go. We've seen the sellout move from place to place. And they come and they go. This is our community. These are our schools. And if the reason we have more closed than we do open is because of our neglect and the miseducation that we have allowed for our students in Benharbor area schools. And the assumption that our parents and our people don't care. But they've shown us because every year approximately $20-some million go out to other schools. In this building, we talk about asbestos, we get these numbers, we look at these numbers, we get all of this stuff, and it's a tiger wounded. But tigers are predators, we're never afraid. And I think one thing that I've been on this Board of Education and as an administrator in this building that I'm sitting in right now, we have never gotten to the real people in this community. Never. For 7 months, I was in this building. I couldn't get to my students because of foolery. I walked in Fairplain East. The corridor is dark right now. The tiles are falling out the roof. Stains everywhere in Fairplain East. And it has been there for years. For me, I don't think one dime of our sinking funds should be spent on any of that until we do right by what we need to get done today with the building that our kids are in today. And make sure that those places, it's not about, I heard the board member say about building a new school. They built a brand new school in Muskegon Heights, state-of-the-art high school, and shut it down and turned it into a charter district. St. Joe has not built a new school. They just kept up what they had and took care of it and added to it. Lakeshore does not have a new school. 30 million. Just build up, the people came, they trusted them, and they picked up what they got. It's embarrassing and it's hurtful to me to be sitting here having these fake conversations when our people in this community are being disrespected. These are my thoughts, and these are my feelings. Like I said, every last one of you got the text. Every last one of you saw the picture, and the public will see them too. Because we are going to have a serious conversation. And the people of this community must be respected. We're getting ready to start a strategic planning session. We're getting ready, there was an advisory group that came in here and gave us specific, after being in here for months, recommendations that I haven't heard anybody speak on other than our president. So this stuff is not new. There are some ways that we can partner with our community. There are some things, the decisions that need to be made that's gonna help our people, not y'all people that's making all this money. And every time they leave up out of here, we got the same building. We got the same grass, trees growing up at the top of our seat in our gym right now. You go in there, you look at those pictures I sent you, in that gymnasium, one of the most powerful gymnasiums in the state of Michigan. When they come to Colfax Gym, it is respected. It is mud up and down those bleachers. They are filthy. And so for me, I'm struggling. I'm not passionate. I'm passionate about Ben Harbor. And I had to tell one of my colleagues, because that word passion sometimes triggers me. Because people want to minimize it. But I think we need to all start letting people know that we do have passion about our town, about our kids, about our community, when I look out here, I see 1980, I see 1981, I see 1979, I see 1978, I see 2007, I see 1993, I see it's a whole bunch of tigers up in here sitting in this audience. 2003, it's tigers sitting right out here. PhDs from Howard University sitting right out here in this audience, watching to see what we're going to do and how we're going to move. This is my question. What is the urgency? When did this just come up? Where did this come from? That this has to happen right now? When did all of a sudden, and with vendors saying that they're not going to give us a bid, then go on. They need the money. But when did this all of a sudden just talk about the blue that we need to demolish 3 schools? Because I've looked at those schools. Martindale, it almost appears that there was a plan to let our school crumble. And it was done on purpose. Because I don't see anything that the maintenance crew or anybody for years, in the past 2 years, and this maintenance crew either, that have gone in and done anything. You can't have a heating bill in Martindale because a tree came to the top. There ain't no heating bill. I walked to Martindale when I was campaigning. 7 municipalities make up this school district. And I was in Bainbridge. And this man asked me, why should I vote for you? He was a white man. He said, why should I vote for you? He said, you all have done a terrible job. He said, I almost thought about not paying my taxes to the school district this year. He said, but I'm going to give you my vote, but I'm going to watch you all the way through. And so, to me, I guess I really don't need to answer my question. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic because I don't want my passion to be misunderstood, and I definitely don't want it to be minimized. But I am going to fight for these buildings that we have open. These kids can walk in these nasty buildings another time. These kids cannot walk in these buildings where the heaters and the boilers are not fixed for them to go. We took the state examination, and it was 100 degrees in the classroom when they took the MSTEP. So any sinking fund money, that's what we need to be looking at as a board. What we got right now, what are we going to do with what we got right now to make sure that the things that are happening right now in our open buildings where our babies attend school, that's taken care of before we even begin this conversation on how to move forward with that. Thank you.
I love that word. One thing I will say is, it would be naive for us to continue doing business as usual. And I understand that it can be tough and painful, but when you look at it, Hall Middle School is 95 years old. When you look at Fairplain, it's 65 years old. When you look at Bard being shut down in 1997, it has not had kids in 24 years. North Shore has not been utilized since 2011, 10 years. And Martindale has not been utilized in 14 years. And you can go in Martindale and you can actually walk in a window and walk into the building. It's accessible, it's dangerous. But we suffered years of lack of investment. We gotta, as a community, as a district, and I understand it's not just Benton Harbor's conversation, it's other community, but other municipalities that are in our district. But we have to realize and come to this conversation, what do we envision Benton Harbor area schools? Do we value education? And do we value, or are we just going to continue doing business as usual? It's even more telling when you look at this report. It talks about the school buildings and how they are describing us. It says good visibility on Bard, impoverished neighborhood. Then they go on Martindale, remote impoverished neighborhood. But when you go on M63, if you know where M63 is, where it's going to take you, it's that big, fancy, nice building. It says under sale, contract, complex, title to be demolished for homes. Very interesting. It's not an impoverished neighborhood, it's on water, but it's very interesting when you look at some of the stuff. Now, I know we have to do something. Doing nothing is insanity, and it's gotten us here. And if we fought for our district, and as passionate as we were, and we told the state, give us a chance, let us get it right. And the state is telling us we need to do something, we need to right size it. Let's be realistic. We have 14 school buildings and 1,500 students. Where do they do that at? It's, you know, we have the school buildings up for sale. Who all bought the buildings for sale? Just a couple of years ago, Bard was set on fire. I had an electric fire. What do we do and how do we improve? And what's the conversation on valuing education in this community? Do you believe our kids deserve a state-of-the-art education facility? Do you believe we have teacher needed to increase teacher pay? Do we believe in order to compete and bring kids back, we need to invest, and if that's building a new school, do it. One of my things is when I first got into the facility committee, I told them, let's talk about building a new school complex. One of the things I want us to do is sell that land out in the township. We don't need the land. But we as a community, that's just the bottom line. Doing nothing is not going to get us nowhere. As you can see, it's the issues and the money that we have to spend. If we don't, what if the state comes in, takes us up? They always been threatening, but eventually, we get new governors. What if the state comes in and demolishes it all or gives it to a charter school? What do? That's the conversation that we have to do. And what do we value education as in our community? What do we value education as in our community? Sorry about that. But what do? And that's just.
Stop. What is your son's?
I mean, these are buildings, and I understand holding on to pride and everything, but if you ever go down south, I'm from Columbia, Missouri, and I go there and I look at their schools and I see how they invested in them. Or at Avalon, South Lake School District, back in 2001 when I was there, they reinvested and kept some of those school buildings, but they rebuilt them. We have to have a conversation, and it's going to be a touchy one, a painful one. But where do we envision school? Is it a problem when you look at the high school and it still looks like what you attended? You see there's still fire hydrants, things rusted out. They still have the water heaters and everything. Well, I don't know if it's water heaters back in the day, we used to call them the big brown water heaters. It's a problem. So what do we do? Do we hold on to it and store that pride and say it's pride? Or do we say our kids deserve a new high school? Our kids deserve better? And how do we attract? And what do we value and bring to make sure we're preparing our kids for world-class education? So that's where I'm at with this. And it's just interesting. I mean, my mom moved here in the 50s, and she went to Hall in elementary. She went to Hall in junior high. And Hall is almost 100 years old. And every year, we test our kids on guinea pigs, because one facility is not where we have to move to another. What do we do? That's the question I want you to answer.
Thank you, Trustee Bowens. Next, we have Treasurer Creighton. And before she gets started, as chair, I'm gonna ask respectfully that you all respect our trustees. We normally just allow for them to ask me for the floor, but I'm trying to ensure everyone has an opportunity to speak their piece, even if it's a little lengthy. So I'm gonna ask, I know that you all are really wanting to clap and support, but we really need to have respect for our trustees. And I ask that you respect me as chair as well. You have the floor, Trustee Creighton.
Good evening, everyone. I'm choosing to pause before I get started, because it's our first one. But as I look up into the crowd, I see tigers, but to my immediate left, like about 11 o'clock, I see a tiger with a crown. And sitting here, looking at that tiger with the crown, and going with our analogy from our CFO, if you will, in this presentation, I love analogies, and I love visuals. And so as I look at the presentation that was presented to us today, and we see this doctor, and so this is a great way to lead into what I'm thinking. You know, in the presentation, it was said that we have a tiger, or the tiger is hurting. When I was in high school between 1997 and 2001, we used to sing a cheer, and it said, "We're from Benton Harbor, couldn't be prouder. If you can't hear us, we'll yell a little louder." And so as I see this tiger screaming at me with the mouth open, it's really hard for me to go with the analogy that's in this presentation, with this doctor. I don't know who the doctor is because I can't see his face. But one thing I know about doctors is that they're practicing. And so as I think about that, and I think about, you know, this tiger that's laying on the table, and then you go on and you see medical staff providing surgery or some sort of a procedure to the tiger. I'm sure that they didn't start this without diagnosing the problem. And so as I listened to this presentation, and I appreciate it so much, it was really hard for me to sit in my seat because I'm from Benton Harbor. And you can't hear me, I have to yell a little louder. And so as I'm thinking about this great presentation, I started to kind of create one in my own mind. So I'm looking at this tiger that's laying on the table wounded, and then you go on and surgery is being provided. But before the surgery, you know, he went for triage, and, you know, they were looking in his ears and checking his temperature and all of those things. And so for me, if the tiger is laying on the table and we're ready to provide surgery, then what's the diagnosis? What's the problem? Why is the tiger hurting? So my first question is, what is our current enrollment right now today?
Sit down.
As you're preparing, hopefully you can answer that question. I'm just trying to triage and take our herding tiger through a little assessment to figure out what the problem could potentially be.
It's about 1,600, right?
Also, do we have any buildings that are being currently occupied with asbestos? That's my second question.
Ms. Creighton, can you repeat that one, please?
Yes, yes, ma'am. The first question is, what is the enrollment
Right.
right now on July the 27th?
Under 16, little under 1,600.
Okay, so is that,
1,600.
is that after the graduation? Is this the current enrollment, like for the fall?
We don't get counted until October 1.
What is the projected enrollment, I'm sorry, for the fall?
Projected,
Mhm.
we're generally losing up to 300 students a year.
So our projected enrollment is about 1,300? Okay,
It's difficult to say because we did get some young people back, but we gotta look at what our audit is. We don't have that number right now.
okay, great. That's the lead into my third question. My third question, okay, so my second question is, my first question was what is enrollment? The second question, is, do we have any current buildings with asbestos? Or have we assessed that? My third question, thank you, Dr. Townsend. My third question is, what are our efforts to stop the bleeding? You know, are we bleeding? I'm looking at the tiger again. I don't know if the tiger is bleeding, but what are we doing to stop the bleeding? Or loss of oxygen, or I don't know if this tiger had some sort of cancer or, you know, but what are we doing right now to stop some of those things that we put in this presentation that's hurting us? What are we doing? Also, you know, it's really difficult for me to sit here and actually during the public comment, I was thinking like, can I go to the mic and speak as a citizen? I know that I'm always a trustee because I took an oath. But, you know, for me as a parent and as a community member, as a taxpayer, I too consider myself a tiger. And so I am hurting. But unfortunately, my hurts were not listed in this presentation. I'm hurting as a parent because I can't comfortably send my children to Benton Harbor area schools. So as we talk about parents in this presentation, I kind of crossed out the word parent and I put my own name in that blank. I'm hurting because I have a student right now that's at another school on their football field practicing. And as I ride past our football field, it's empty. And you know, I just think about all of the programs that we're not offering. Other districts around us are charging hundreds of dollars for programming, for summer camps, to raise money to put back into those things. So when we say what we can and can't use money for, and then I heard someone say, oh, we have buildings, the other districts around us are not doing anything in their buildings, they're not tearing down their buildings. You're absolutely right, they're not. In the wintertime, their buildings are still hot sometimes, and in the summer, cold, and in the summer, the buildings are hot. But you know, when I was growing up, I think Trustee Bowens mentioned the word poverty in impoverished neighborhoods. Well, you know what? Welcome to Benton Harbor, right? That's what we're told. But one thing about it, I didn't know that I was in poverty as a kid. But one thing that I was taught, and I was reminded of it during COVID, is to take care of the things that you have and be grateful for them. So with that being said, I think about the buildings that we have. I think about the building on Union, on Fairplain East, you know, that we have children. As a matter of fact, that's my neighborhood. And if my kids could attend Benton Harbor area schools, that would be the school that they would be at. And I think about, from a parent perspective, what it would be like walking into that building as a parent and looking at the condition of that ceiling. I think about the times I rode past the building and the sign said, that drove me crazy, even looking at the sign, identifying the school as a different building. So for me, as I'm sitting in a triage or the lobby of the hospital, I'm not on the operating table yet because I don't know what the problem is. So for us to sit here, I'm glad that we had this meeting. But one thing about it is that we must diagnose the problem. We don't have to have a perfect diagnosis, right? Because it's practice. This doctor, he's practicing, right? So we need to, though, look at and be honest with ourselves. What are the problem or problems? It's really difficult to go to a hospital and go straight into operation mode. It's difficult. As a matter of fact, if you do it, you're committing suicide. So, sitting here as a board member, if we go into this thing and say, okay, the doctor may say, oh, if you don't, right now I feel like I'm being faced with this. If we don't make this decision by August, the whatever, then my feet may be cut off, my head may be cut off. It's like, I feel like it's an ultimatum. However, you still have not told me what the problem is. Why is the tiger on the table receiving an operation? And so for me, I'm very, it's beyond passion, it's beyond a connection. For me, right now, I'm embarrassed. I feel like as a tiger, I want to yell a little louder, but the problem has not been identified. So I'm really struggling. I wrote down a few things like, okay, my fourth question is, I heard that buildings are being vandalized or people are living in the building, but on the printout, we're paying alarm bills. There were camera systems. So I guess I'm kind of confused. I know that people can work in, but how can someone be living there and we're paying an alarm bill? Again, that's another issue that we need to look into. If we have people squatting in our schools right now today, July the 27th, who is providing our alarm service and what are we doing to protect our assets? That's question number 4, Liz. Did you get that?
I did, thank you.
Thank you so much. Also, in the condition of our buildings, this is question number 5. What are the values of the buildings in their current state? I think about, if you look on Zillow right now, as a matter of fact, there were some houses in my neighborhood on Facebook, and I was looking at the houses and I was thinking about the property values. And, you know, I heard our CFO mention, and by the way, this is not directed, none of these things or questions are directed towards our CFO, because I know that, you know, this whole nice presentation is not 100% done by him, so I want to put that disclaimer out there. But as I was thinking about that and all of the property values in our community, I'm looking at houses and it's the house on Colfax about a half a mile to a mile from our school. One within the last 30 to 45 days sold for $250,000, and one is on the market for $325,000. And those houses, I'm sure they were tested. I'm not sure if they do or don't have asbestos in them. However, I'm thinking about the multi-million-dollar facility that our city of Benton Harbor has approved to start or break ground, and excuse me if I'm getting this wrong, in the near future on the river. And we coincidentally own a facility known or formerly known as Chemical Bank, sitting there. And so as I think about that, sometimes, and I'm gonna share something with you guys and write this down in your, toolbox. It's not always what they say, it's what they don't say. And so as we're thinking about these three buildings, and I don't know if I've answered your question about what side I'm on, but if we think about these three buildings that we're looking to demolish, what about the other buildings? I know that recently we had a huge, area down there on the river next to our chemical bank that was, what do you call it? It was deemed as, I can't think of the word right now, but condemned. And so I'm thinking about the chemical bank building and how much that could potentially be worth if there's a building right down from us, a 3 to 4 bedroom home that's worth $325,000. I mean, I just can't, with my small imagination, imagine how much or what the value of that building. And so that was question number 6, I think. Have we assessed our property and property value? Question number 7. What happened to the sale of North Shore? Could we have sold that building as is and walked away? Not saying that that's something I'm for. I just wonder what happened to that. We still haven't heard about that. And then, I guess it leads to my last and final question, which is what's wrong with us selling as is? But then my comment after that is, who said that we needed to sell anything? Because again, we have a tiger that's laying on the table, being operated on, that has not been diagnosed. So, I did not come with these questions. These were questions that came to my mind out of the presentation. So I just want you guys to know that I'm not trying to surprise anyone and violate our norms. But as I'm sitting here as a hurt tiger, I need someone to call 911 so that an assessment can be done and we can figure out why or what is wrong with our tiger. Please remember, in the words of Mr. Triplett, tigers are predators and never the prey.
So I would just like to provide a little bit of clarification. Tigers are predators, never the prey. Is actually the words of my queen, Alexandria Shannon. No disrespect to Secretary Triplett, but I just want to put that on the record, where that stemmed from, and I agree 100%. Okay. I know, I'm not trying to take it, she is, I just had to make sure.
Oh, thank you, ma'am, thank you. Ask your queen who gave her her pep talk when she was getting her hair done before her pageant. That probably was Mr. Triplett.
No, that's not Miss Triplett at that time.
Oh, excuse me, look your left.
They weren't here. Okay, sorry, let's get back to the business at hand. So I just want to thank everyone for their insight provided, the questions asked this evening, the statements, the analysis, all of it. I think all of it is meaningful. Liz, I hope that we're able to get all of those questions, because I would like for the full board to be emailed the questions that weren't able to be clarified, so we all have that clarification. There's a suggestion in our packet by Mr. Johnson that we tour all 3 schools so a well-informed decision can be made. That's something that I'm hoping that we can get scheduled. We can do it in shifts, so we can do it in one meeting, but if we could work on that, Ms. Goodwin, as well. And I don't know how feasible it is, Dr. Campbell and Mr. Johnson, but I would like for us not only to view the schools that we're discussing today, but if we could get a schedule to view all of our schools so that we can kind of have clarification on the status of all of those, whether they're being operated, where they're in operation or not. And I know that might take a bit of time, but if we can get that scheduled over the summer, that would be awesome. So for me, if I had to say what choice I choose today, I don't think I'm well equipped to answer because I see both sides of it. And it's difficult because I feel like if we demolish our buildings, then we are admitting that we're losing this battle. But then I also look at it similar to a person, a patient, whose heart is still strong and still fighting, which our heart is, but they have an ailing leg, they have an ailing foot, they have an ailing arm. And sometimes you can try to hold on to limbs that are not operable, and it increases the damage to the remainder of the body. And so that's the piece that's difficult for me, is because as a president, as Mr. Triplett has said, I quote the Community Engagement Advisory Committee in their plans often, because as an employee of the state, I understand that when the state comes in and gives you recommendations or guidelines, you need to show that you are considering and working within the parameters of those guidelines. So it's difficult for me to just dismiss those recommendations, even though I know they're recommendations, they need to be embedded in the thread of everything that we do. So I want to make it clear that me allowing this special meeting to take place was not meant to disrespect the community or any board members or suggest that I am voting to demolish the buildings, but the state has given us parameters, and we need to be showing that those are parameters that we're discussing and considering and taking into consideration, because if we ultimately decide that we don't want to demolish the buildings, we need to have it documented why we decided not to, and have it documented that it was something we considered and we were not completely negligent of the recommendation. So if there's any questions from anybody as to why I, as chair or president of this board, allowed this special meeting to take place, that is why. It's imperative that we have conversations, whether they're difficult or not, and it's not disrespectful to the board or the community that we have the conversation. There's a lot of things historically that have taken place that people have spoken on, but the thing that matters today is we're here. I, as president, can't fix anything that happened 20 years ago, and neither can Secretary Triplett. But this board has been challenged with the responsibility of deciding how this district proceeds. A lot of you all know I've only been on this board for a year and 5 months, but it will be over my dead body that anybody say that this district failed to do what we need to do for the betterment of this school district. And if that means having a conversation about demolishing buildings, selling buildings, whether we're gonna do it or not, that's a conversation that we're gonna have. And if it's heat that has to be received off of that conversation, then I stand up as chair and take that heat. But you will not say that I did not make sure that this conversation was had, as the state and the CS has suggested that we do. So that is my comment and clarification to my board and to the community as to why this conversation is being had, is necessary. And I will not have a conversation with those who sat on that SEAC and came up with recommendations and tell them, we did not want to utilize what you suggested at all. So if I had to say where I stand on the 3 choices, I don't have a choice at this particular time, because I think that this was the start of the conversation, but there's a lot more that needs to be had. And what I would anticipate will happen is that the board will either be allowing the bids to expire or requesting an extension, because it doesn't appear that the board as a whole has decided that it wants to award any bids. However, I am not in position to speak for the board because the board has not said that unanimously. So this is a conversation topic that we'll be addressing in our August board meeting, but I wanted to give us an opportunity to at least have this room and this window of time for this to be a focus that we address at this particular time. So that is my comment. And unless anyone else has something further to say, we will proceed. Mr. Johnson, I thank you so much for all of your effort that you put into your presentation. I thank you for your tiger and your analogies, your financial descriptions and all of that. You are always very well prepared, and I appreciate that. But if there are no other questions or discussion, I will proceed and give Dr. Go ahead, Secretary Triplett. You have the floor. Okay.
And then President Robinson, too.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
For me, one thing, and to our citizenry, you know, as new board members and what have you, we do have a lot of dialogue. We're pressing our way through all of this. And again, you know, the question was posed, what do we do? First of all, we take care of what we got. Because out of that 1,500 students, there's some people that have never left this district. And we're always trying to go after those people that have left and continuously neglect those people who stayed, who never wavered when things got tough. And so if it's 900 students, we need to treat them right. Because to be honest with you, it has absolutely nothing to do with the building. We have failing scores. We have issues, serious issues that have been presented to us as a Board of Education. And so everybody have their relationships, their connections, their understanding, and their thoughts about this situation. My understanding is that this is for us to have a discussion and a conversation, to listen and to voice our opinion about what it is. And so to jump up and say that we have to make this, are we prepared? Because I feel, since I've been on this board a couple of times, I felt like because of the presentation or the urgency and the things that were presented, this and other, I feel like some of the decisions that I voted and supported, I regret some of those things because of what I saw. And so now 7 months in, I can approach it in a different manner. So, and I definitely want to say too, you know, I don't take anything that you say personally. And I hope that you don't take what I say personally. But it is the responsibility of this board is governance, oversight, and accountability. And holding people accountable for what it is that they're supposed to do. And the thing that we are as a board, not about being cool with nobody, being friends, I like you, I don't like you. It has absolutely nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with what is best for this community and what is best for the children of this community. And so I definitely want to say, you know, I'm going to always show my passion. I'm going to always speak what I think my truth is as it relates to the Howard area schools. I think that it's premature. I don't think that this is something that needs to happen right now at this particular juncture without having things that's going on with COVID, without having things that need to, how we're going to open up our schools. Are we prepared? I don't think that this is something that we need to rush into at this particular juncture. I also think that if we're going to be as transparent as we said we are going to be, this is a great opportunity. And we're talking about we've already paid and made arrangements with MASB for the start of our planning for our strategic plan. I think that this right here is something that we need to definitely take into consideration. But the thing that's at the forefront is every dime that we have that's available to make our schools ready for our kids to come into these school buildings in September, at the end of August, we need to make sure that we're doing that and that we have a plan of action. For us to make, I think it's premature for us to make a decision of this magnitude, but we have been calling since we've been on this Board of Education for a plan of action as it relates to facilities. And so we've been ready to make, you know, we're being saying, well, in August, we need to do this. We don't have a facility plan of action. We none of that. And it's almost like, I think that the people will look at it, it's not about the state, what about us? As being, is doing this stuff premature. We don't have a plan. We just shoot from the hip. And that is what has gotten us in trouble historically. Because somebody come in here and say something, and then we all jump into it. We have people, I feel confident in people that are on our facility committee. Some of the stuff that was presented here today, some of the things our facilities committee didn't know prior to. So this right here is called self-examination. You know, how are we going to move as a board, professionally and ethically? We can't just up because somebody says something and say that it's so. That is what has gotten us in trouble. Because time after time, the last 3 or 4 superintendents, because they said something that people trying to work together, people want to be cool, and every last one of them. And we still sitting here. We must inspect what we expect. And there is definitely an ethical imperative that must take place. And it's never perfect. Thank you.
Go ahead, Treasurer White.
Yes, I'm sorry. The tiger, you know, he's speaking to me, he said one last thing. But Mr. Tripoli, he must have heard it. You know, we've been praying for discernment. And so the tiger, asked, well, what is the facility plan, or do we have one? And so, as he was thinking or saying that to me, it made me think about, again, that crown. And that crown, you know, if you're a tiger, our president mentioned, let me go back a little bit, our president just mentioned Benjamin Harbor. And so when you think about Benjamin Harbor, I think about the float or the Blossom Time Parade. And if you think about it, you know, when you think about the Blossom Time Parade, I couldn't be on the flag because I was scared of crossing the bridge and walking on the bridge. But one thing about the bridge is that it's a road over water. And so if you follow that path of the Blossom Time Parade, and you keep going, or you make a left, before you get to that North Shore property, you're gonna pass a golf course. A golf course that was built on salvageable land. As a matter of fact, if you stop or slow down, you'll see modern plastic, clothes, right? A vandalized building, but the golf course is still worth, I think, about $500 million. So, when we think about that, just know and understand that that don't necessarily mean, right, that because the building is closed or can't be salvaged or neglected or some of those fancy terms that were used. I guess you get the point that I'm making, or that the title reminded me of, is that my dad taught me a long time ago, something is only worth what a person is willing to pay. So, we have to think about, it's beyond what something is worth, right? It's about what people are willing to pay. And so as we think about, or we keep going into these discussions, I would just like for us to also, what is the facility plan? That's for open buildings, closed buildings. And right now, being on this board, I don't know what it is, but I'm challenging my colleagues and our administrative staff, led by our superintendent, to make sure that before anything else, and this is just for me, you know, I'm just one member of that body. I would encourage, right, our superintendent and his staff, with all the time that's put into this great presentation, without a plan, we're planning to fail. And so I just really hope that there's a facility plan somewhere that can be shared with us as a board and shared with the community, so that we can see in the eyes of that tiger over there sitting to my left, as we continue to triage what his problem is and give him a potential diagnosis. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Treasurer Creighton. I want to make sure that our board does realize that we have the real property inventory, because we want to make sure you guys see that as we begin touring our building so that you know the status that has been provided to each building at this particular time as we work to flesh out that plan. I did want to give Dr. Townsend an opportunity to speak if you wanted to on this topic. You don't have to, no pressure, but if you had any input to provide.
I respect the input of the board and the community. I'll do whatever I'm asked to do. We're going to execute, and the future is bright. So excited to get started.
Perfect answer. All right, so it's the inventory. Mr. Johnson, can we get that link?
I believe you.
It may not be in your book. Maybe I just wanted that.
We'd be happy to provide a copy of the PowerPoint presentation and link that to the website.
Thank you for that suggestion. All right, next on the agenda, we have Dr. Townsend with contract renewal staff report S1.
Submitting for board consideration, administrative contract renewal, facts and analysis. According to Michigan Revised School Code, section 380.1229.2, the following contract is brought for board renewal. Jeff Weber, Facility Director, Central Administration, effective date 7/1/21, policy reference 3124, employment contract. Recommended action that the Benton Harbor Area Schools Board of Education votes to approve the contract renewal for the aforementioned staff.
Is there a motion to approve staff report S1? The motion has been made by trustee Rockett Martin and supported by trustee Buchanan for staff report S1. Questions, comments, or concerns? Any questions, comments, concerns from the board regarding staff report S1? You have one, go ahead, trustee Bowen.
Good evening, Ms. Megan. I got several questions and then I have a statement that I'm gonna read. When was this gentleman, I'm trying to find out, when did he come to the district?
May 2020, we did not have I started February 2020. We were without a facilities director. We aggressively tried to find a member to fill that role. We did find Mr. Jeff Weber. He worked with us May 2020 and immediately supported us getting into the COVID-19 extended learning plan, outfitting our buildings so our young people could be safely and socially distanced with our staff.
And before that, who was?
Previously, we were contracted with Barry and Risa, working with a gentleman by the name of Troy Boone, earning about $120,000 to direct our facilities. I immediately said that needs to come in-house, and we're paying significantly less, about $50,000 for that service. $40,000 less to do that in-house. And I believe this is a former student of Benton Harbor Area Schools.
Okay. I have to say this, and it's in no way an intention, and I'm gonna bleed some out because I wanna protect the staff, but this is my honest heart-to-heart feeling. Even right now, I can't even tell you how I'm gonna vote because I'm undecided. It is no way to say that this personal decision we will be voting on today is not deserving of this position. I understand the start date and COVID and all, but it seems like it's a level of disconnect between the board, staff, and the presentation. I took an oath to be a voice for the voiceless, to be a voice for the people, a fighter for our children, and a champion for our teachers. And when they come up to me and they tell me that they do not feel like they're being respected or they have concerns and they're brushed off, I have a problem with that. And then when it's like it's whitewashed, I just don't understand how we are evaluating, and the evaluation is like we're in Mars And the concerns and everything, it's like I'm in Jupiter. I think it's two different levels, and I pop up on the schools and I see different things, and I feel the concern. But I also understand, as me being on the facilities committee, there has been some things that has been worked on, like the bus garage, you know, that's been torn down. How many years that's been hit? It's been there for a couple of years. I noticed with the development of the gate, when you would drive past Colfax and you see that gate, that has been fixed. I know about the teen center. It used to be a dumping site. That has been fixed. So there's no way in an effort of me to minimize his effort being here less than a school year and coming in COVID, you don't know what you have to do. The CDC is giving you all of these mandates and everything. But I also know when I walk into those school buildings and teachers tell me, oh, you must be gotta come up here often, because we didn't have these on the ground. I also know when it's prom and I'm at home eating a taco and I get a call, they don't have no hand sanitizer, and I gotta stop what I'm doing and bring a box. And then it's a level of rudeness. It's a level of unrespect. And these people that are teachers are also our voters. They also are our taxpayers. So yes, you can go to school. Everybody that went to school at Benton Harbor High School are not the same culture. It's a different type of culture. And hear me out when I'm trying to say. So I just think, number one, I feel like I'm stronger in making the decision today. Number two, I feel like the concerns of staff and other people are being whitewashed as it's irrelevant, and that's dangerous. That affects the culture of the district as a whole. And that's why here I am calling for a survey to be done on all departments, because it's dangerous. Now, do we let Barry and Lisa come back? That's dangerous. What do we do? And it took how long for us to fill this position? So I think it needs to be a level of understanding that you work for the taxpayers. You work for the district, and your goal is to make sure you're treating everybody with that winning attitude, the spirit of winning, and making sure we're providing quality service. And that's my whole topic. And I'm not saying this department as a whole, because I understand it's been outsourced. But the type of service that we want, I think it needs to be understood as a whole from administration. It's a level of disconnect. That's it.
Thank you. So I will also include for Trustee Barnes that he's a member of the Operation and Facilities Committee, along with myself and Vice President Bradley, who is not present today. He's our chair of that committee. And so what I would like to mention is that I have realized in trying to juggle governance and not micromanage, that this is a committee that probably is a little bit different in that in order for me to be over operations and facilities, I need to be in them. And so trying to figure out systems to ensure that this committee is getting tours frequently, quarterly. Maybe we need to potentially alternate our meetings and do them in a different building each month. You know, just kind of thinking of ways that we can ensure that we're more present, but then also not putting the accountability on us because we're at 50,000 feet, but also Dr. Townsend in ensuring that you're getting on your jetpack and you're going to the building. That Mr. Johnson, although we know he's immaculate in everything that he's doing, that he's actually getting out and going to the building. Because we want to make sure that we're giving people the freedom to act in their roles and their position, but there also has to be a level of accountability in that I can't fix something I don't know is wrong. And so that's me stepping up as a member and trustee of the committee and realizing that in each meeting, I'm being provided all of the work that are being done, but I can't see what's being missed if I'm not going and seeing what's not being addressed. So this is just me speaking as it relates to our particular committee, and I know that we have a meeting tomorrow in the extra level of accountability that we're planning to take as relates to this position, whether or not this contract is extended or not, we will be more present in the building and more physically present and asking more questions. And I just want to make sure it's noted on the record that Dr. Townsend is clear that we are not micromanaging. We can't be responsible for operation of the facility if we don't see them. So that's a system that we can work out in our committee tomorrow. I'll give you the power to initiate what that looks like. Maybe talk to Mr. Johnson, try to get something planned out, but we definitely need to be more present. I was going to ask Trustee Bowens if he would be willing to be an assistant chair because our vice president is a truck driver and is often on the road. If it's a responsibility that you would not like, then of course, as president, I will take on that responsibility, but I did want to inquire. That's something we can discuss tomorrow. But that was just me taking accountability as a member of this committee and speaking for our VP and us realizing the more that we need to give because we don't want to be in a position where we have teachers coming and telling us that we have issues that we're unaware of. And so as long as we know there's issues, we can resolve them, but we have to make sure that we're in the position to be in the know, and Dr. Townsend will have to do the same thing. We have to come down and be more hands-on with viewing things. So that's my comment and my plan of accountability moving forward, regardless as to what direction this particular vote goes. You have the floor, Treasurer Craig. I think you want to.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go ahead.
You can't hear me? I'm sorry. Oh, you can't hear me because you know I'm not taking my mask off. Good evening again. And you know I want to put this disclaimer out there that I am very shy. And so I don't really speak a lot. But I think it's that tiger over there with his mouth open and a little bit of passion that's kind of making me talk. But nevertheless, I just want to remind you guys why we're here again tonight. So right now, I know at the beginning of our meeting, I voted no for this to approve the agenda. And I just want to be clear on why I did it. It's not for me. It's starting to feel like members of our administration it's starting to kind of feel like a form of, in some way, shape, or form, insubordination. And so I'm using that word, and I'm not using it to threaten anyone. I think it's important to just put that out there, that to be insubordinate is to not do what is being asked of you. And so I don't think for me, when I went into that meeting regarding this position, had anything to do with an individual as much as it did the information that was received in April, in May, and in June about the facility. It had nothing more or less to do with complaints or letters of concern or whatever you would like to call it. But at our meeting, officially, the Board of Education as a whole voted to table this matter because we wanted to learn more about the evaluation and or some of the claims or allegations that were put out there in those letters, in those pictures. I think we got reminded of those. It was about 200 of them today that we received again. And so for me, I'm really having a hard time moving on or being able to vote yes or no because there was some information that was requested that's still not been provided. And so it's not a matter of wanting to cause any kind of friction or chaos. I would just like to be able to provide the governor's oversight in that last A, which is accountability. And so I think it's important that we put that out there, that accountability must take place. I think what Trustee Bowens was explaining, for me, if I had to choose a word, it would be accountability. He described accountability. We must hold our people accountable. Now, accountability does not always mean punishment. It doesn't mean punishment. as a teacher and lifelong learner, being accountable is just being able to admit that something happened and you acknowledge it, you figure out a solution and you move on. As a teacher, for me, accountability provides teachable moments. So I think sometimes, I used to hear an analogy that we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Today, I don't think this contract renewal, one way or another, we don't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. But what we must do is provide accountability. And so, those 200 pictures, not one of them was a lie. If you walk through this building, we could probably take hundreds more. So it's not about whose fault it is. It's about who is hired to fix the problem. So again, I think it's important for us to understand and go with that analogy that we have tigers. I agree 100% that our tigers are hurting. We're hurting, but we hired a turnaround specialist in the seat of superintendent to turn around our district. It's not a secret that we're hurting. It's not a secret that we're bleeding by 300 plus students a year. It's not a secret that every meeting since I've been on this board for 7 months, that we've lost at least 5 to 10 staff members due to resignation or termination. So I think it's important, again, for us to remember the A in our bylaws, which stands for accountability, and figure out what does that look like. We requested evaluations, we did not receive them. So for me, that's accountability. The evaluation is not punitive. The evaluation will tell us exactly what areas a person performed well in and the areas of improvement. And so for me, that's why I did not want this on the agenda, because I feel like if I vote yes, I'm not holding myself or colleagues or administrators accountable. And if I vote no, it's the same, because we know that there's a problem. We have a tiger herding, right? But we need to diagnose the problem and come up with a treatment plan. We cannot continue to perform surgery. We can't continue to operate without accountability and a diagnosis. So with that being said, I'm going to pass the mic back to my president, but I just want you guys to know that we're walking in troubled waters, constantly making decisions without holding our employees accountable.
So yes, so we still have board announcements or comments that I was asking. You had a comment to add. Okay, well, let's get to it.
Excuses are tools of incompetence used to be a monument of nothing. People who use excuses will now become stuck with peace. This board of education
Thank you.
when I joined this Board of Education, we went on our first tour of buildings. All of you all were there. And we saw, either you went or not, if you were there, you saw it. And we saw from the first time that we stepped in every building, the thing, not being petty, the ceiling, the tile, the cleanliness of the building. From building to building. No paint, nothing. When we go into a building and we're in COVID protocol, so quite naturally, money has come in for COVID funding, and we're looking for things. I'm looking for things. not the superintendent's responsibility to provide those things. There is a staff that's responsible for this. And I did not see a lot of those things that was being reported out that were supposed to be in place. When I walked over to this building, I was to Bear Plain East, I was down the hallway. Board member sitting at this table told me, because when I went in the building, I thought it was rather strange. All the other buildings with the lines and the circles along the side by the lockers. I thought this looked kind of strange to me, but I didn't say anything. There were circles down the middle. A teacher comes out, and we're meeting down in front of the office, and say, oh, I'm glad we got these now. We just got these today. In the midst of a pandemic, where students have been in that school, we took a contract with plowing, grass cutting, ground facility. I asked myself, what are the things in the contract? I asked about the leave. I was told by the CFO that in this contract, they will go through, they will do like you do for your first spring cleaning. They'll go through and do all of the major work, which include leave. Now this is April. Leaves fall in the fall. And we're not going to dismiss the fact, I'm not going to dismiss the fact that these things have been here for years. Okay? We get ready for, so I go through grass cut. So I go through inspecting what we expect. Leaves piled up in corners, leaves up against fences. This is school properties, and we're talking about, we got fences where vines are wrapped all the way through our fences, trees busting up through our fences. This is our property. I go through, take these pictures, because I'm inspecting what I expect and what I was told I could expect. Those pictures went out to this Board of Education and to the superintendent in April. We're getting ready for graduation. I'm riding through. The same stuff is there. Garbage in the back of this building. Table, trees. Our superintendent went all in and went out there and started working. And that's great. Mold in field strip field. Weeds growing up in the seats at field strip field. And our parents and our community is getting ready to come to one of the largest events that this school district holds. Up and down the ramp. Garbage, food, leaves. So first of all, this is not about individuals. This is about what is right. Some of these employees, and in particular, a lot of our support staff are citizens, not our professional staff, but a lot of our support staff are citizens in this community. And they call us. And when we send them back, because that's our responsibility, not to tell them what to do. When we send them back, they're afraid to even go back and say anything, because they don't want to lose their job. You can make it purple if you want to, but it is not. As I stated, out here today, it was grass big in the sidewalk coming into this building. But people have cut this property at least 3 or 4 times with the contract. It's weed. It's a tree. You go out here, you go out to your market, it's a tree. Coming out the ceiling, I asked the man, is that a tree coming out the ceiling? Or is that a tree that's behind the building that's taller than this building? So for me, I cannot sit here as a citizen in this community, as an elected official, and an evaluation was sent that said that this was an effective evaluation, that this person has an effective evaluation. And what I see. So for me, this is not personal. Now, I'm like Ms. Creighton and everybody else. I wish this could have been held in a different conversation. I've talked to the superintendent and to the board president myself. This has nothing, it's about accountability. And what I found since I've been on this Board of Education, that people struggle with being held accountable. And they take it personally. We hosted a district tournament. The bleachers are muddy, filthy. They're horrible. I was so embarrassed that people came across the state into this gymnasium, and that's what they saw. So if you guys are fine with it, that's on you. But I have a responsibility as a trustee of this Board of Education. And what I've seen, I don't see the correlation to what is excellent and what I see. So that's where I am. So thank you. Oh, and one more thing. I'm gonna close out. When I come into this building on the other side, and I go into the receptionist's office, it's the same stains that's been there for years. And our receptionist is sitting in there, our parents, our people come. When I go upstairs on the 3rd floor, the executive suite, and I walk through that hallway, it's the same stain in this carpet. I don't know who's responsible for it, but I think it's a part of the facility. I really do. I'm not that far removed from it. So that's where I stand.
Okay, so I'd like to see if trustee Rocket Martin or trustee Buchanan had comments to add. If not, I'll give it back to trustee Bowman. No, this is for, so right now our comments are staff report as one. So if you have a comment to make prior to this vote, I'm trying to give them an opportunity. If not, I'll go to trustee Bowman. I think you had a follow-up comment.
That's true.
Yes,
That's true.
I was just wondering,
I'll respond by email to this.
we have a committee meeting tomorrow. Could we table this? Can I put a motion on the floor that we table this and bring it back on our August meeting?
You don't have to ask my permission.
I'm filing a motion that we table this and bring this back towards our August meeting.
Support.
All right, so trustee Bowman has requested the table staff report as one that was supported by treasurer Creighton. I'm gonna make sure Liz has that. And so no further discussion at this particular time takes place prior to the vote. So Secretary Triplett, you have to call roll for vote as to whether we table it.
President Robinson,
No.
Secretary Triplett, yes. Trustee Bowen,
Yes.
trustee Treasurer Creighton,
Yes.
trustee Raquel Martin, no. Trustee Buchanan, you're not clear? They want to table this move forward, and we're going to the facilities, meeting tomorrow, before we make a decision. That's what that's about.
In a meeting tomorrow.
So what you are determining is whether you want to pay the staff report as one. You're the last person to vote on whether you pay it.
I would suggest that. President Robinson?
You think yes? You think yes?
She voted yes. So motion, yes.
There's a clarification from Mr. Johnson.
There is no facilities meeting scheduled tomorrow. No committee
So the
meeting.
emergency meeting might have to be scheduled.
So we can follow up on that, Mr. Johnson. I think tomorrow may be finance. Is that what tomorrow is?
Yes.
Okay. So
The
we'll
motion
have,
passed or failed, President Wilson?
the motion passed.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken, I'm the only person that voted no. No, Raquel, so President Robinson, Trustee Raquel Martin voted no. The board votes for yes to table were Creighton, Bowen, Triplett, and Buchanan. So staff report as one has been tabled. A date has not been set at this particular time. I think you said to our August meeting? Yes. I'm sorry, okay. So the motion was to table this report to our August meeting, and that motion passed.
All right. I would like to apologize to you, President. I was into something else.
It's okay. It was, and we had quite a bit of discussion going on, so I understand you're perfectly fine. So next on the agenda, we have old business. So for old business, the only thing that I want to notate is that I have open hours for trustees the third Monday, 6 to 9 p.m. Just to remind everyone that everyone normally forgets. But what I can do is to set you all a set time for every Monday, and then I'll call you. And if you don't need, you just don't answer or pick up and tell me you don't need me. But what I realize is often when the third Monday comes, people forget. So I'll follow up with you all to get something set in stone. We'll have that as a set appointment. However, you all don't have to wait till the third Monday. You can just text me to call you like Secretary Triplett does, and we can talk. But I just want to make sure everyone has that clarification. So I'll follow up the set in stone appointment, and that way I'll automatically call you regardless. If you don't want me, you just tell me you don't. Any other old business on the board?
President Robinson?
You have the floor.
Yes, ma'am. I just wonder if we could, while we're waiting, for that facilities report, if we could receive the information or possibly, for our facilities committee, so we can find out what's in our contracts, not only for facilities, but, what is the language of the contract as it pertains to deadlines? Because I see that we're renewing or non-renewing or whatever, voting on contracts after, our calendar deadline. And so I just wonder, if we could refresh, if the information is provided already, information as it pertains to our contract of our chief and, the policy on our evaluation. And if they can be shared or not.
Yes, ma'am. So I will follow up with our chief of HR to ensure we get that information. I am not a HR specialist by any means, but what I do know is that if the administrators decide that they're not going to extend or renew a contract, they have a deadline, I believe in March, to provide that to us, because we, without saying too much, had a situation where we had to act quickly to potentially review not extending the contract, but didn't have to go that route. So I believe that deadline was in March, but because I'm not an HR specialist, we'll ensure we get an actual clarification on that, prior to our next meeting.
Document, please.
Okay. Secretary
Those
Triplett.
contracts are 1 year,
Mhm.
are yearly contracts.
Correct.
We have an opportunity to renew,
Mhm.
if, or make a decision whether or not we're going to renew the contract or not keep the contract going, that's why they are 1 year. So I know a couple of positions recently we did where it was a 2-year contract. I think it was recommended for our administrator. But we got 2 years, so like, say for instance, if something comes up, and if something does not work correctly or the way they want to go, that has to be done in March, because we're gonna go against, the contract. Okay.
Thank
I
you.
guess to be specific, President Robinson, I think the floor, so that my question or comment is not.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I guess I'm wondering, I heard someone say that, you know, I know that many of our positions or administrators, not one or the other in particular, but I do know that if, administrators, I just want to know the language because I thought that there was a clause, or it's in my thoughts, that there's a clause that says if a person is probationary, which is within that year status or whatever, that different things take place. And so I just want to be able to read that language and also, look at evaluations of all of our, because I know that at, a previous meeting, trustee Bowens asked that an investigation take place, due to some concerns with different departments. And so I just wanted to be able to make well-informed decisions and spend some of my summertime researching and studying the contracts and making sure that I'm aware of what's going on and clear on their language moving forward.
So point of clarification, Chair of HR, when is your next meeting? I know it was copied on the agenda.
It's tomorrow.
Okay, so can we add this as a tentative topic? I know that we may not have as much, because, Ms. Gill has not had an opportunity to receive your questions just yet, but if this could be a question that is clarified in the HR committee tomorrow, Dr. Townsend, and then I'll pass the floor to you. I believe you have some clarification to provide.
Yeah, I believe, just tomorrow when we have the meeting, just state, Treasury Creighton, just state what it is that you're asking for. We sent the agenda out today, and we added the 2 topics that you requested, the, virtual and remote questions that you had. And we only have an hour, and we're tight on that time. So, just bring it up tomorrow, and we'll address it there.
Well, perhaps we can put it at the beginning of the agenda.
I'm cool with that.
Okay.
Because, but I want you to have all your questions answered, so we do that. Just,
Okay, so we have our recording secretary here. Is that something that you could, notate and possibly send out in the morning?
You want,
Yeah, so I just want to have a little space, and it can be a couple minutes on the agenda at the beginning to just talk in general about the language of our contract as it pertains to deadlines and evaluation, and what the policy states on whether the evaluations are public or private. So just kind of the language of the contract and specifically deadlines and, evaluation.
okay.
All right, so I think my old business was making sure you guys know when my office hours are, 6 to 9. Trustee Creighton's was trying to ensure we have information we need to make an informed vote on staff report as one. Any other old business? All right, hearing none. Any new business from the board? Hearing none, we have
New business.
new business. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, I know I'm on the road tonight, but I just wonder, as we're moving forward, I guess if we can hear a little bit about in our next meeting or meetings to come, I know parents are asking, we're looking for what's next, like what are we doing? People are sitting around idle, and when we're idle, I think we kind of get anxious, and so I think it's time for us to work on our messaging as a board on like what's next for students, what's next for staff. I know that we're hiring, we're recruiting, and so I guess, under new business, this is my commercial. I'm ready for a commercial, and so this is the commercial, new business commercial.
Awesome, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So now we are at public comment on agenda items. I'm sorry, on open public comment, thank you, Liz. Okay. Okay, so I know you all have heard this statement, but we ensure that we read it both times so there's no confusion. The Board of Education recognizes the value of public comment on educational issues and the importance of allowing members of the public to express themselves on district matters. Today, there are 2 areas for comment on the agenda, of which you may decide when to speak. Earlier, we had public comment on agenda items, and now we are on open public comment. Per policy 0167.3, which governs board participation in board meetings, we request that you preface your comments by completing the public participation form with your name, address, email, and group affiliation when appropriate. Each statement made by a participant shall be limited to a 3-minute duration, and per our bylaws, no participant may speak more than once during this meeting. Participants shall direct all comments to the board and not to staff or other participants. The board will listen, take comments and questions under advisement, and not respond at this time. I, as president, will refer questions to the superintendent for research and response. If you have specific questions for the board or executive team that require follow-up, please email those directly to liz.goodwin@phds.org. The first person that we have on the list is from earlier. We have Ms. Tina Johnson. She's still here for open comment. You may come up. Thank you so much to those who have stayed with us. You are appreciated. All right.
So mine is kind of like a request. I like working with kids. Can you hear me? Mine is like a request. I love working with kids. I advocate for kids. I'm a kid-friendly person, believe it or not. So my question is, once school starts, whether how you guys decide to go, would there be any parent, anything parents do? I'm a big, huge PTO person. Everybody knows this.
Can you turn that up, please?
How do you, I don't like but how do you do this? Oh, is this it?
We're gonna have.
Can you hear me? Okay. I'm a huge PTO person. I like to work with younger ladies because of my job title. I heard it all. And I just think at this time, you want to bring community in, and don't sugarcoat it. Don't say what you're going to do and don't do it. These young ladies and men need someone of their age or someone that everybody know me as Mama T. Everybody know me. And to be real with them, and when the parents come up acting a fool, ask them what's the reason, what's the problem, explain to them. You cannot involve community at your leisure, such as, I'm gonna be a community leader today, I'm gonna be whatever position you have today, and then tomorrow I don't wanna be bothered. It doesn't work like that, work with the public sector. So I like to work with everyone, schools, and Ms. Robinson knows this. And I was one of the ones that took my kids out of Ben Harbor, my baby, because I was very upset at how things were going. And went to Coloma, and I brought him back, and I'm gonna tell you, I brought him back because of Dr. Townsend. I'm gonna be honest, and Ms. Robinson knows this. I am very into education. I'm also into making sure these kids need to learn. I don't wanna say, they need to learn how to work with community and public figures. I have been to every school just about in the state of Michigan because I work for the state of Michigan. And I see different schools. Ben Harbor's not the only one that's struggling. I'm gonna put it out there. And I hate that people think that way because it's not true. There are a lot of schools struggling, but they don't put their stuff on blast. They work it out internally. And they're not acting a fool, as we can sometimes do. But with this being said, I talked with the previous principal some time ago about opening a closet. And when in this closet, it's for kids in need, where they may not have the personals that they need. And I don't have a problem mentioning it, although I don't work in county, I have people who are willing to come in and help. Getting donations, I'm good at getting donations, and Ms. Robinson knows that as well. Also on the weekends, going out and reaching out to these parents who may need help. I have a heart for that. I got a couple of degrees to match it, but I have a heart for that. And that's something I want to do, but I want to do it under the school sector. I don't want to be hired for this. I'm a free worker, very free. But this is something that we need to reach out to. I have a child, 2 boys who graduated from here, one who's going to Fairplain Junior High. And I want to be able to say, hey, let's do PTO. Let's start. Why these kids can't have a prom? Why can one kid mess up and everybody is out? That's not fair because they all deserve this. So I know I'm over my time, but I just want to kind of put that out there. You guys are able to reach me. Ms. Robinson knows how to.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And she did bring her son back because of Dr. Tom's rock and voucher for that. We had that conversation. So we appreciate you for taking a stance and bringing your son back. Thank you so much. Next we have Ms. Booker. Is Ms. Booker still present? Okay, so we have our questions, Liz, I'll give those back to you. Mr. Shern? All right, you have the floor, sir.
Thank you. My name is Todd Shern from Benton Harbor, Michigan, class of 1978, Benton Harbor Tiger, all right? So I'm gonna tell you how I think, and many of you know, tear down those buildings now. We can do better, and we will do better. 500,000, thank you for that, right? You said $500,000 to tear the buildings down, correct? 125 million to build the buildings that we need. Let's focus on the 125 million to get the building. So I got the mayor here, we're working on that. We are working on that. So let's get these buildings down. While we get them down, we got the little, what is it, the little money from Joe Biden. So let's take the little Joe money, get these buildings down, make sure that everyone knows that we're moving forward. And only thing, I'm back to Mr. Triplett's point, buildings go down, but make sure you mow the grass, okay? And I don't recommend selling the property, right? Because we build it back. In fact, let's take Biden's logo, right? Build back better, all right? So we building back. We're not gonna put, again, our kids in these raggedy, y'all know I cuss, but I'm not going to, okay? But in these raggedy, you know what buildings, right? When they come back, there'll be new buildings for instruction. So that's it. I got the mayor here, I'm just proud of him, okay? Benton Harbor High School graduate, and I couldn't be prouder. So again, for you guys, I recommend that you go ahead and take the big general building down, develop your forward-reaching plan, look forward, okay? And believe that you can happen. And ma'am, the Tiger can come back, and we can make it come back, because it ain't there. We are there. See, again, we are there. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shern. All right, the last paper that I have is no other, oh, go ahead, sir. No, it's okay, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I kept my phone here because I didn't read it.
Okay, that's perfectly
Would you,
fine.
your name, please? Could I have your name, please?
My name is Mark. Can you hear me okay?
Say it again?
Better? Yeah. Thank you. Hi, my name is Michael Kouachi. I'm a resident of St. Joe, Michigan, but I'm passionate about the Benton Harbor area. I also have some property in the Benton Harbor area. Full disclosure, I'm an investor, but I'm here for the community. So I started 3 years ago as an update. I come here several years later, from 3 years ago, 4 years ago, as a quick overview. I'm bidding on North Shore to convert it to a community center based on food culture and gardening. The bid was presented publicly in one of these forums. My offer was presented and it was counter-offered, and that offer was not presented to me, and I lost that bid. There was a huge fiasco about it, trying to understand it, and immediately passed it. And so what happened, I've tried and have been numerous times to re-engage Benton Harbor area schools to purchase 1 or 2 or 3 of these properties for the purpose of converting them into social change facilities for the community, not for profit. So, in that time, I had several conversations. So, to the board, we heard tonight, there's 3 primary reasons to demolition and prevent, to demo all these units. One was the prevention of charter schools, potentially. The other one was about brand equity. We heard a lot about brand equity. And the third was about maintenance costs. So I'm going to ask three sort of questions, with sub-questions. What have been the maintenance costs per year for each year over the past 3 years? How much money is being saved by demolishing these units? If we're spending $500,000, what are we saving? The school needs to be maintaining these buildings in order to record an expense as a con. We heard all the cons of maintaining these buildings, but we've also heard that the buildings are dilapidated, therefore it's not being maintained. So the second question, not rhetorical, what are the chances of somebody purchasing one of these buildings and converting it to a charter school? If that's a legitimate concern, we should probably have a legitimate answer. I heard there was little or no interest in people purchasing these properties, so therefore it's probably little or no chance to get the charter school. And then about brand equity. Do you feel, this is not a rhetorical question, that the Tiger brand is better defined by the quality of the teachers
staff, and education? Do you believe it's better to enhance the leadership and build the trust of the administration versus the condition of these dilapidated schools or trying to demolish them? Should we fix the important items first, like existing facilities where kids attend daily, invest in their playgrounds, their health, and their wellness? Would the Tiger brand be a greater return on investment by doing these activities rather than demolishing 3 schools? I heard tonight from several members of the community of interest of repurposing these buildings, particularly the couple behind me. I think we should hear this. I know we're out of time. Can I finish this, please?
Go ahead.
I'd like to propose the board spend some same amount of time and effort in understanding these proposals as we did in understanding the demolition. What if these become low-income housing? What if it was a community center for the people? Or what if it was a job training facility? You say there's security, I'll skip that, we already addressed that, thanks, Angel. Okay, a couple additional questions. What is the long-term plan for facilities? That's a specific question. And secondly, if the board decided to demo, what are the plans for the parcels after the demolition? Real estate is high, it's a lot of revenue, and why would we pay $500,000 to demo when we can sell them as is? Real estate is high. As an investor, I know that you probably sell, but right now, the taste as an investor from what happened 3 or 4 years ago, you have 12 properties listed, not 1 sold.
Sir, I'm sorry. So we'll make sure any additional questions that you have, we'll make sure you get those to us. I do value your comments, but I have to be consistent because another public member went over and I had to end her comments as well. All right, so next, and I do value everyone's comments. It breaks my heart to have to cut you off. I want you to know, but I have to be fair and equitable for everyone. So the last comment that we have is none other than our Honorable Mayor Marcus Muhammad. You have the floor.
Thank you, Madam President, trustees, superintendent, public. I'm standing here today elected as the mayor, but I'm a parent. I have 2 children in Ben Harbor School. My daughter will be a senior this year. My son will be a sophomore. I'm also standing as an alumnus, not only at Ben Harbor High School, but I was a student at Martindale. Mr. Tripler was my 5th grade teacher. And I look forward to going in that building every day to learn how to read and to write. I also played for the Bard Eagles.
All right now.
Where Mama Lou would come in and inspect what she expected as a member in the program that she was the president and CEO of, as I understood. So there is some sentimental value. Sinking funds are public funds. I believe they're connected to a millage that the people are paying hard-earned dollars of poor people's money, as well as landowners, entrusting this body to handle their funds with efficacy, with integrity, with honesty, and with care. So that's number one. We just renewed the millage a few years ago, and the funds, seeking funds, I believe, put up a lot of signs. If I'm incorrect, please correct me, and did some repair. So I think that an inventory on how, since the renewal of the millage, how have the sinking funds been used? I don't remember in recent time that sinking funds have been used to demolish. Although it may be able to be used for demolish, I'm sure that they can be, but I don't think the intent of the sinking funds when we asked the voters to renew the millage was to be used to tear down schools. Just like when we asked the voters to vote to fix the streets, because that's their money. And I know my time is running, but please suffer me. Because I don't come all the time, but I feel I have something to say. You know, so just consider that as we move forward. Bobo Brazil Center, nobody could approach me with an idea to tear that down. I had a meeting today concerning putting together an ad hoc group and finding some ways to renovate and put the building back into use. Because when I went to Florida, Orlando, and they mentioned Bobo Brazil's name at the WWE 25th anniversary, the way that they honored him, I was hurt at the fact that the community center in its own time is sitting vacant. So lastly, trust. Very important, because when I look at that word, trustee, there's 3 words in one. The first word is trust. The second word is rust. And the third word is us. And when the trust erodes, then the rust, which is deterioration, dilapidation, that's what happens to us, the relationship. So I think that, you know, as we start, and this falls back on me because I'm in a position of public trust. So as I'm throwing the boomerang of truth out, it's coming back. But as we make these decisions moving forward, especially when you start talking about demolition, using taxpayer dollars. I don't know of any schools in St. Joe that they just demolition. Lakeshore, they put $35 million into Lakeshore. Middle school, $16 million, $36 million. Middle school, $18 million. High school, $18 million. Same with St. Joe. They didn't do a new school. They put 30-something million in to remodel. And when I walked in it, and I walked in here, I could cry. Because they reinvested. And when we put it on the idea CFO for a millage, which you was a part of, and we were having meetings about $55 million being invested back into the school district with a new school. All of a sudden, the superintendent is under investigation, and now he's wiped out. And the idea of us building a new school is gone away. And the idea of tearing them down has come back. Be careful of recommendations. Because the last major recommendation was to shut this school down. I still have the letter from Rachel Eubanks, the treasurer. Shut this down. And we wouldn't even be meeting here if that recommendation was taken. We don't know where we would be meeting because they closed King, but you brought them back. Every voting precinct closed in the city. And what you do on this issue is going to set a precedence because we still got Morton Hill vacant. Creative Arts, I don't know what happened there. Stern Bronson now is a voting, not a voting, but a apartment complex. Benton Harbor Junior High is Thurgood Marshall. So I just think that let's leadership is what it takes. The right leadership. Not saying we can save everything because we can't save everybody. But that which we can salvage, I think we should. Because the greatest form of maintenance or the greatest cost of maintenance is no maintenance at all.
I know that you're a very busy person, so we appreciate you sitting here with us until open public comment so that you provide that insight. And And this, this is the article about the court. You can bring that forward, sir. So next on the agenda, we have, Dr. Townsend's comment. So I'll give the floor to him. And this is from the approval of the court. This was last year? Okay. So what he's brought is the article that talks about the board agreeing to name the floor of Benton Harbor High School after former coach Paul Wilhite. And I actually had the honor of that being my first decision that I took vote on as a member of the Board of Education, was to honor the court after him. So I was proud to do that. You have to follow up with Dr. Townsend. Okay. Dr. Townsend, you have the floor.
Thank you so much. First and foremost, I want to thank every member of the community that came out this evening to share their thoughts. I think everything is valuable that we hear. I also want to give a special thank you to our Board of Education for listening to our community members in our district presentation. I know we will do what's best for the community. I hear everyone loud and clear. I will not work adversely to the community or our Board of Education. And lastly, I just want to share that our district did officially sign the contract with MASB to begin our strategic planning. So that's a great news for us. We're putting together a plan for what the future of Benton Harbor will look like with regards to academic achievement and just young people. So please stay tuned for that. Get involved, members of our community, and thank you so much for bringing them out.
You're welcome. Next we have Trustee Buchanan. You have the floor.
I would like to also piggyback and say thank you people for coming out. You know, I got on this board. I mean, I was retired. I said, what can I do? So I ran for the school board. My son Ed didn't want me to be on the board. So once Mr. Rundle was at the high school, he said, Lou, I need you up here. So my son came home, Mama, if you go to the high school, I'm gonna quit school. He said, and then the next day he came back, Mama, guess what? Everybody loves you. You can work up there, but it's too late because they had already filled the job. See, I'm real when it comes to things and city and community work with young people. Our young people are hurting real bad, but you can't point the finger at Mr. Triplett or Ms. Rocket Martin. Mr. Sharon said it, we got to do this. This board is young, and I like when they ask questions. Somebody said, well, what y'all trying to run this thing? No, when Mr. Townsend came here, when we was meeting here, he never came and said what I was gonna do. He said, what we gonna do. Now, I've been working on the superintendent, where I went to them personally and talked and asked questions, they didn't do it. I think Mr. Townsend done a wonderful job. People come up to me and say, they'll call me up. So, you know Benton Harbor, and you know Benton Township. I'm in the township. You can say the chicken was red, and by the time he get to you, he was black. So education, we got kids that can't even read right now. Let me say this. I know we got to go. And while I'm on the phone, on the mic, I need a ride home. I was at Family Dollar right here on Bridget. The young man went in the store, and he was going to cuss the cashier out because the sign said, "Do not enter if you ain't got a mask on." So I parked my car illegal on the side of the building. I said, "Come here." You come to me. I said, "Why did you go in there going to cuss that lady out? You know you can't read. You right." I said, remember when I told you you skipping, jumping out the window at Fairplay? Then one day you're going to need to learn how to read. He said, you're so right. I said, now go in there and apologize to that girl. See, what it is, we got to stop blaming everybody else. Charity starts at home. It starts at home. I better say my little 5-year-old great-grandson. Man, I wish I could find somebody to keep. He tell me, Grandma, you shouldn't have said that. And then when Mr. Triplett came out today to bring my book, he said, Grandma, Uncle Ronaldo, is that my uncle? I said, that is my godson, so that is uncle. Oh, well, I guess I'm going to have to call him Uncle Ronaldo.
Little boy smart. But what we got to do is don't blame, this Mr. Tyler not to blame for this. Who was to blame for building $1 million garage and they got no budget? Come on now, thank Ben Harbor. So what we need to do is our teachers don't get paid enough. They in hot buildings, the air conditioning. Let's do something. Let's put on something to get some money. Let's stop criticizing the mayor of Ben Harbor because he's trying to fix the potholes in Ben Harbor. Let's help him. Let's do this. Let's work together. And this board, I can tell you, I'm proud of Deshauna. All of them young. And they ask questions because they're concerned. And that's no twist. Mr. Triplett out to put the mayor in seat. Let's keep the people that we have. And let's get these teachers some money because they're not getting paid enough. I'll never forget Mr. Sherman at McCoy. He didn't have no 15 supervisors in the lunchroom. He would go to that door and do this. Calm down. So Ms. Robinson, thank you very much. And like I said, I don't want to be, I don't want to do anything. Sometimes I would read something that I should have did earlier, and I didn't hear what you said, but I'd like to be an attendant. Don't nobody make my mind up. I got my own mind. They'll tell me who to vote for. We need to do it together. Let's put on a fundraiser. Let's do something. Because our kids are hurting every day. School getting ready to get started. And then I'm going to say this, Ms. Robinson. Lady called me, Miss Buchanan, could you come take me to pick my son up? I said, where is he at? All clear. I said, no, because you should have left with the big house. You could have walked and picked him up. I ain't take you nowhere. Because see what I'm saying? You need to think before you start saying something. I said, no, you sit down, you can walk to Calvin, Britain, Bar, Don Bronson, you can walk anyway. But we didn't have, thank the board for coming, thank the resident, let's work together. I love Mr. Townsend. I think he's gonna do a good job. Like, nobody can, everybody's trying to tell him what to do. You can't do that. Give him a chance to show what he knows. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Trustee Buchanan. Next, we have Trustee Right Mark.
Not a lot, but I was just thinking, you know, I've worked in the buildings that have been extremely cold and extremely hot. I remember being in Stern Brunson and they had a classroom in the basement. It was a supply room where we had so many students at the time. I remember they forgot to put the heat in. So we had to sit in our mittens and our gloves and our hats until that job was done. But I remember the state came in and they were viewing all of the schools. And when they got to Stern Brunson, they looked at the wood, they looked at everything, and they said, well, this building isn't so bad. And it offended me. I'll tell you why. A school that old, that they just saw the surface part of it. They didn't really know what was going on. And you're telling me that 100-year-old school is good enough for my kid? Oh no, it's not. It's not. My kid was, you know what, I look at the programs on television and I always look at the schools that they're broadcasting these programs out of. Even a little like problem child, or look at the schools, look at what they have. Everything is painted, is pretty, is new. And you know what? That's what draws children back to your district, whether you believe it or not. Parents have told me, I want my kid to be in a new school. We may not be able to, but like you said, Mayor, if you spend $35 million upgrading the shell of their school is good, the shell of our school is pretty good. We can do that. They did it for the SIG grant, they did the whole third floor. We can do that. But some schools we have in our district, it's not worth putting that kind of money in to keep bleeding money out and keep bleeding kids out too, because of the facility not being up to par. Our kids deserve computer labs that are upgraded, and I'm not saying they're not, but there are biological labs and things that they can do. They should be dissecting and do x-rays. I mean, all kinds of things that they are doing in high school to prepare them for careers outside of high school. We've got to have the facilities to do it. And I would like to ask parents, you have your kids in other districts. Do you need for us to do for you to bring them back into the district? We assume, but I've talked to some parents, they say, well, we like the diversity in other school districts. So, other things are in play in that. But let's ask, your kid is in another school. You've never put it in Benton Harbor High School. You never put it in Benton Harbor. What made you choose to go to Auckland? What made you choose to go to Kelowna? What made you choose to go to St. Joe? What made you choose to go to Berrien Springs? If we ask and be willing to really do what those people said to do, then I think we'll make some headway and not guess about what we're doing. But I'm still in favor. I heard you, Mayor, and 16 million is a lot of money. And when I look at the paper that that Jeff had, I think one school would cost about 16, 17 million. So, if we can do that, they upgraded, I believe, MLK when I got it. From the floor up, they did a beautiful job. Unfortunately, with all the switching and changing from the ninth grade to this to that, things get broken and not taken care of like they should be. And so the facility is not as in good shape as it was when they upgraded. So we do have to train our children to take care of things. It's not all right for you to walk down the hall and just throw your paper down and spit on the floor because you can. It's not all right for you to be on the wall because you want to. So we have to train our children also. But when you get a building and they say, well, you go in this building and all you smell is urine. Well, you have 100 years worth of pee on the wall. What do you think you're going to smell? What do you think you're going to get? Because it soaks into the walls and everywhere else. I used to go in on the weekend on Friday for a whole thing of bleach in the bathroom and just let it set all weekend so that it would cut that odor. But that's what you can do. And the other thing I have is the chain of command. And I like what Mr. Triplett said, what he did, because he saw something and he did something about it. And I would say to all of us, when you see something, do something about it. If you see things going on, and I say the chain of command in this way, in a building, it's not one person's job to take care of that building. It's everybody's job, from the students up, to take care of that building. If, in fact, there is a problem with the staff, there's a chain of command. You go to that building administrator and you say, I don't have hand sanitizer. I don't have this. The building administrator through the chain of command. That's your job. You get over it and get it done. To me, the building administrator is the voice for that building. And if I had to go buy it myself, I would. If I couldn't get it right then. So, use the chain of command and make everybody accountable on every level, not just one person. It's everybody's job to take care of our buildings. If I'm walking down the hall and I see something, I should just go and pick it up. If I see something, I'm going to tell the person that I should tell. I'll tell the building administrator, and he can tell whoever. So I would like to say that. And, but I'm so happy we were allowed to have this meeting. I'm happy that we were able to hear to Jeff's presentation. And I'm still in favor of new schools and not bleeding out our money in schools that have now gone past repair. They have gone past repair, past the part of getting back. I'm not saying all of them, but certainly some of them are so dilapidated that it would not be worth the money to put in them. And I told one person, I said, when they closed Martindale, we didn't leave anything in that building. People think we left stuff in that building. No, we didn't. Every teacher in the district, every principal in the district We went over and we cleaned the building out. We didn't leave anything worse in any of those buildings that they shut down. You know, Markdale, Bard, Boynton, when they shut it down, we cleaned it out. We got everything that was worth taking out of it. So you don't have to worry that they threw stuff away. No, they didn't. We took it. So, yeah, but certainly, let's keep our minds forward. I like what you said. And that, you know, our kids are worth having the best and the prettiest and the best facilities possible. And that's what I'm for. That's what I'm for. I understand about, you know, in your heart, because they tore down my old elementary school, but they built a new one with the same name and had mementos in there to show that that was there. And that was, I went to a new elementary school in the 50s, and by the 90s, they had built a new one, so they kept their school 40 years. So, I mean, why are we keeping schools over 100 years? Why are we keeping schools that long when we can build new facilities? You know what, if we go to work, we can. If we have to stand on the corner and get everybody to pass by, hey, vote for this, vote. We can do it. We can do anything we want to do. And our kids deserve it. And I'm done.
All right, thank you, Trustee Rockhead Martin. Ms. Goodwin had to step off, if you guys are wondering. I think Ms. Buchanan, you asked if you could step away from the table, and you're more than welcome to do that. I'm gonna pass the mic to Secretary Triplett.
This has been a long meeting. I don't have anything to say. I'm just wishing the best for our school district. For me, I think I got it now. What it is, as it relates to my role and my responsibility as a trustee, I'm connected to the citizens of this community and to a quality education for our students, not just in words, but in deed, and making sure that we have established protocols, and there is truly a Ben Harbor way. So thank you for coming. Very, very proud of the cameraman here tonight. Just all. And I looked over there, sitting a little while, and double back over there. But very proud of you. Good seeing you here tonight, sir. And again, Dr. Talbot, we had our conversation. It is what it is. I would like you to be successful. And I'm going to do my part to support you. But I'm going to do what I can expect within how the very students will be. Have that conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretary Triplett. I appreciate you, and you know why, in the conversation yesterday, so thank you very much. All right, next we have Trustee Bond.
I don't have much to say. I think we heard that a lot today. No, I want to say thank you for coming. Before I go any further, it's a quote that I want to read by former First Lady Rosalind Carter. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but on. And that quote is profound. You know, being on the facilities committee, I asked the question, was it worth continuing to put money into our high school, and let's look at rebuilding the high school right here. And they said, well, to get the building up to code, it would be 83 million. That was just a ballpark. You know, I believe the children of Benton Harbor deserve better. I also understand the emotional ties. You know, growing up as an Army brat, my first African-American school was Calvin Britain. That was the first time I ever seen a black teacher or a black administrator. It was the first time that I understood about the African-American culture and learning. I had to learn how to fend for myself. I was a little African-American boy listening to NSYNC and Hansons and the Spice Girls and everything. Benton Harbor taught me a thing or two. So I understand about the ties, and when they were shutting problems written down, it was emotional for me, because once again, that was the first African-American school I ever was exposed to. I understand it's gonna be a very tough topic in this community. But those schools that are sitting there are idle. What do we do? And how do we envision education in this community? Do we invest and believe that our children deserve the best? Or do we continue to let things remain as they are? And on that note, I would like to say, God bless you all, and see you next month.
Thank you, trustee Buchanan. Next we have treasurer Craig. I'm sorry, trustee Vaughn. My apologies. You have the floor, treasurer Craig.
Thank you. I realize that I'm a treasurer of the board, but I really like the way that our honorable mayor votes down trustees. I really like the visual illustration of trust, rust, and us. And as I think about that, I was sitting here and it's something about this tiger that just keeps looking at me. And it reminded me of Stein Bronson. And when I was a student at Stein Bronson back in the 80s, I remember that there was a creed on the wall. And I don't know if Ms. Marquette, I know she was an administrator in that building, teacher, Mr. Triplett as well, teacher in that building. But it was something that said, and that's the only elementary I attended, but it said on the wall, education is my #1 priority. And I think as I go back to that definition of trustee, trust, rust, us, I think about the fact that education is the #1 priority, or should be. And so I know that we'll have to discuss and talk about everything and all the business and everything, but I think it's important for us to remember that education is our #1 priority. And so I heard Ms. Raquel Martin ask a question, and I think it was rhetorical, and, I'm not putting her on the spot, but I'm gonna put myself in the hot seat since I've kind of been doing that all night. And she said, why choose? And as I think about the question, why choose, or why did a parent, or why should a parent, or why have parents make the decision, a tough decision, to choose something else besides our loves in Harvard area schools. And so I don't know if that question was for me or not, but I'm going to answer it with presuming positive intention. I honestly didn't choose because of the building. I didn't choose because of buildings being idle, but I chose because I didn't feel that education was the #1 priority of our district. And I also chose to be a member of this board as a trust was of Steve, to make sure that education is at the forefront of what we're doing. And so I just want to remind my colleagues of that. I know that we have a lot of topics that we need to talk about, but I think it's one pressing topic that I would like to be at the forefront of our work for the next 5 months. And that is education. And so as we're starting and planning a new school year, I know that we're gonna have to talk about this facilities plan again, but I just want to stay focused and make sure that we are keeping education as our #1 priority, and we don't allow this to fall. I know that news reporters are here, but we have to make sure that in all that we're doing, that we keep education at the forefront of what we're doing, and that is our #1 priority. We are recruiting right now students, preschool through 12, and so I'm gonna throw it out there. We are looking for teachers, K-12, we're looking for support staff, and so there's a list on our website. And so I just want to invite us to make sure that we stay focused on what it is that we're doing. And we'll be starting school next month. And so I will hope that our agenda next month is about that. If there's anything that needs to be approved in our committee meetings, moving forward in August, I hope that education is at the forefront of that agenda. And also, I heard a community member say that we needed some balance and a balanced plan. And I was thinking about that, and as I thought about balance, I started thinking about ownership. Because I know if you get on a hoverboard, right, and if you don't have balance, you may fall. So as we think about the trust, Russ, and us of being the trustees, let's think about what does the ownership look like and how can we provide balance to that. So I just want to thank everybody for coming out. Thank you all for your insight. Thank you for hanging in there with us. Thank you for listening. And thank you for being a tiger. And that's my comment for tonight.
Okay, so I don't have much to say and actually won't have much to say. I just want to thank everyone for coming this evening, for being willing to have this conversation, for giving your insights, not only to board, but our administrative team, support staff, and the community members that have stayed here with us this evening, to give us your insight and your input as well. Just want to ensure everyone knows that this work is hard. We have some tough decisions to make, but each of us are dedicated to doing what is best within our area schools, and we will be successful no matter what, because tigers are what, Secretary Griffin? So at this particular point, I'm gonna ask for adjournment, and two of my members have run away and gone to the bathroom. But is there a motion on the floor for adjournment? Is there support? Okay, the motion has been made by Secretary Triplett and supported by Treasurer Creighton. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Okay, thank you. Treasurer, Secretary Triplett?
President Robinson,
Yes.
Secretary Triplett. Yes. Secretary Creighton.
Yes.
Trustee Vaughn. Trustee McKenna. Trustee Raquel. Motion carries.
All right, so this meeting is officially adjourned at 9:09 p.m. I do not believe that Buchanan North Bowman will come back and dispute
I
that.
was
So
just
thank
gonna
you all
ask
and have a
you,
good evening.
Triple didn't hear me. That's usually.
We were working with adjournment.